Welcome back, my friends, to the Paranormal M channel. Wow, it's so good to be back after a long day doing what I love. Thank you so much for always supporting the channel and for sending in your mysterious experiences. I'm always happy to be here with you, and I hope you have a great night's sleep. Now, without further ado, let's dive into today's stories. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. So, a few nights ago, my boyfriend Evan and I did this little weekend getaway out in Montauk, and we stayed at this old place called Seabrook Manor. Neither of us had any clue people even whispered about it being haunted. Evan booked it because it looked charming and classic. Big windows, old school vibes. The kind of place you imagine drinking coffee in a robe and pretending you're in a movie. We were supposed to stay 2 nights. The first night was totally normal. Well, normal-ish. We originally got a room on an upper floor, and the second we stepped inside, it had this weird smell, like a freezer that had been unplugged for a decade. You know that sour, stale, cold air smell? I couldn't do it. We went right back down and asked to move. They put us in room 214 on a lower floor, and honestly, it felt like an upgrade. It was bigger, quieter, and it had this huge deck. Out on the deck was this little stone statue, not quite a gargoyle, more like a squat lion thing. And the creepiest part was how it was positioned, like it was watching the far end of the walkway instead of the room. Evan laughed and was like, "Great, we've got a guard." I laughed too, but I didn't love it. Anyway, that first night, fine, peaceful, slept like normal people, no drama. But the second night is when the energy shifted. We'd been asleep for a while when Evan nudged me and whispered my name like he didn't want the walls to hear it. He told me he heard the elevator, the doors opening and that soft rolling sound, like someone had gotten out. And normally that wouldn't be a big deal, except the hotel felt empty. All weekend we barely saw anyone. So at around 2 in the morning, it just felt wrong. Like, why would anyone be moving around now? Then Evan goes, "And the pillow. Look." One of the pillows that had been propped on a chair was now on the floor, like it had slid off. It wasn't tossed across the room or anything dramatic, but it hadn't been there before. I tried to be the calm one. I was like, "Babe, it probably just slipped, or you bumped the chair earlier, and it's a weekend. Maybe someone checked in late." I said it like I believed it, but the truth is, once he said it out loud, I couldn't unfeel it. I kept the bedside lamp on. Evan was tense, I was tense, and we just stayed awake, talking in low voices, doing that thing where you try to explain away fear while your body refuses to calm down. We kept checking the door, checking the corner of the room, checking the deck through the curtains like we expected to see a face pressed up against the glass. Eventually, it got close to 4 a.m., and I was exhausted. So I did that very naive thing people do in horror movies. I looked at the clock and said, "Okay, it's past the creepy hour. We're safe now. Let's just sleep." And I turned off the lights. I fell asleep almost instantly, like my body had been waiting for permission. And then, maybe 15 or 20 minutes later, I snapped awake. Not gently, not confused. I woke up like my whole body was screaming, "Move." My heart was pounding so hard I swear it made my ribs ache. I called Evan's name, over and over, like I needed to hear another human voice right that second. He jolted up too, totally panicked, asking what was wrong. And here's the part that still makes my skin crawl. I didn't think. I didn't sit up and assess. I didn't grab a shirt. I didn't rationalize. I just ran. Evan came after me, frantic, dragging me back inside while whisper yelling, "What are you doing?" And once the door shut, we just stared at each other, both breathing like we'd been chased. At that point, there was no, "maybe it's nothing." We decided we were leaving. Right then. Not after breakfast, not after sunrise, immediately. We started throwing things into bags. Evan was laser-focused, quiet, pale, moving fast. I kept doing this weird, half-laughing thing, like my nervous system couldn't decide whether to cry or crack up. And Evan kept snapping, Stop, just pack, just pack. When we finally got into the hallway, the hotel felt even more silent than before, like the building itself was holding its breath. We pressed the elevator button and waited. And waited. And waited. It took forever. Long enough that I started imagining it opening and nobody being inside. Long enough that my palms went sweaty. When it finally arrived, we got down to the lobby, and the front desk guy looked at us and made this little joke about us leaving so early. Like it was funny. Like we were just dramatic tourists. Evan didn't laugh. I barely could. And now it's been a few days, and I still don't feel normal. I've dealt with anxiety before, like real, intense anxiety, and this flipped a switch in me. At night, I feel this heavy pressure on my chest and arms, like the air is thicker, like the room is crowded even when it's empty. I wake up and just listen, waiting, bracing, and nothing happens, but my body doesn't believe that nothing is happening. I've tried little comfort rituals, went to church, did a white light meditation, tried to calm myself down, but I still feel unsettled, like I didn't fully come home when I came home. And I keep wondering, quietly, when it's dark, if something followed us. Or if the scariest part is that my brain and body got spooked so badly, they're still acting like they're trapped in that room. Okay, so this started when I was about 8 or 9. Back then, my grandpa, his name was Elias, and I had this routine. Every night, we'd pray. Like, really pray. We were serious about it. I'm not like that anymore, but at the time it felt like this protective habit, you know? Like if we didn't do it, something would be off. One night, Grandpa Elias had to leave early for a late rehearsal for a show he was involved in, and we just didn't pray. I told myself it was fine. One night wouldn't matter. But the second I got into bed, I had that feeling in my chest, like my body knew I'd skipped something important. I couldn't sleep. I kept rolling over, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. And then, at some point, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember is waking up suddenly, like someone snapped their fingers right next to my ear. I turned over, and there was a little girl standing near my bed. She looked old-fashioned, like she belonged in some dusty photo. She was wearing this vintage sleeping gown, the kind with long sleeves, but it was ripped and filthy, like it had been dragged through mud. Her hair was a mess, thin, stringy, stuck to her face, and around her neck, God, I still hate saying it, there was this rope, like a noose, and she was clutching this dingy cloth sack, the kind you'd use for laundry, bunched up in her hands like she'd carried it there. She was so dirty, I could swear I could smell her. Not like a normal kid who'd been playing outside, more like damp and rotten, like old basement air. I was frozen. I couldn't even breathe right. Then my brain finally caught up, and I just started whispering prayers as fast as I could, shaking under the covers, begging for it to go away. I didn't stop until I must have passed out again. And then, this is the part that really messes with me. About a month later, I skipped praying again. Not on purpose, just fell asleep. That night, she came back. This time, she wasn't holding the sack anymore. Just the rope was there, hanging loose around her neck. Her hair was worse, plastered across her face so I couldn't fully see her features, but I knew it was her. Same height, same gown, same horrible stillness, like she wasn't breathing, like she was being displayed rather than standing there like a real person. After that, I moved out of that house and went to live with my mom. New place, nicer apartment, totally different neighborhood. Years passed, and honestly, I forgot about her. Not because it didn't haunt me, but because enough normal life piled on top of it that it started to feel like some nightmare my brain made up when I was little. By then, I wasn't praying at all. That part of my life had faded out. Sleeping without praying was just normal. One thing never changed, though. I've always been terrified of closets. I don't know why. I just hate them. So I had this rule. Closet door stays closed. Always. No exceptions. One weekend, my cousin, Rory, came over for a sleepover. We were messing around late, and for some reason I finally told him about the girl. It was the first time I ever said it out loud to someone. He laughed, of course. Like, not in a mean way, just that "you're so full of it" kind of laugh. He kept calling it a creepy story I made up to freak him out. Eventually, we got tired. I remember getting up and checking the closet door like I always did, making sure it was shut tight, and then we crashed. And then it happened again. The same exact kind of waking up. Instant. Sharp. Like something yanked me out of sleep. I turned my head. My closet door was open. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and clicked the flashlight on. And there she was, inside the closet. Same little girl. But this time her hair was swept aside just enough that I could see her face clearly. And I'm telling you, it wasn't like before, where it was just scary because she was there. This time it was horrifying because of what she looked like. Her eyes were gone. Just dark, hollow sockets with streaks of dried blood running down her cheeks like someone had painted them there, and they never fully dried. Her gown was still torn, but now it looked stained, like rust-dark patches all over it. And her mouth looked cut, like the corners were sliced upward into this forced, awful smile. Not a smile like someone happy, a smile like something pretending. I panicked and shook Rory awake and hissed, "Someone's in the closet. Someone is in the closet." I don't even know why I said someone, like it was a normal intruder, but my brain was scrambling for anything that made sense. He lifted his head, looked past me toward the closet, and I will never forget what he said. He goes, "What the hell is that?" And then he disappeared under the blanket so fast it was like a cartoon. Just gone. And I dove under too. We stayed there, both of us shaking, not talking, barely breathing, just waiting for morning like it was the only thing that could save us. When the sun finally came up, we crawled out and the closet door was shut again. Like nothing had happened. Like it was all some shared hallucination. But Rory was pale. And when I asked him what he saw, he described her. Exactly. The missing eyes, the blood, the torn gown, the too wide smile, every detail. And that's what gets me. Because if it was just me, I could have convinced myself it was a nightmare, or sleep paralysis, or my imagination. But he saw it too. I don't know what she is. I don't know why she showed up when I stopped praying as a kid, or why she followed me years later to a completely different apartment, or why it was always in that same pattern. Waking up suddenly, turning over, there she is. I haven't seen her in a long time now, and I'm grateful for that. Truly. But I swear, even telling you this right now, I can feel that cold, crawling chill along the back of my neck. Like if I turn my head too fast, I might catch the closet door open again. So, I grew up in the same house from the time I was little until I left for good. It wasn't some ancient farmhouse or anything. My dad had it built in the late 80s, and as far as we ever knew, nobody had died there. No dramatic history, no tragic headlines. But locals used to talk. Not in a spooky tour way, more like casual. "Yeah, this area used to be where different native tribes lived," type of talk. And I don't know. I guess I filed that away as my only explanation for why the place never felt completely quiet. Like the house could look normal, smell normal, sound normal, but the air would still feel charged. like you'd rubbed a balloon on your hair and didn't realize it until you walked through a doorway. By the time I was about 13, my parents finally started letting me stay home alone after school, with my older brother, Miles, technically, but he had practice most days. So I'd get home first, and there'd be this long stretch where it was just me and the house. And listen, I know how dramatic it sounds, but being alone in that place felt different than being alone anywhere else. The moment I'd step inside, it was like my body would react before my brain could. That prickly feeling up the back of your neck, the sensation that something was aware of you. So I made a routine. It was ridiculous, honestly, but it was the only thing that made me feel like I had any control. I'd do a quick sweep of the rooms with a kitchen knife, like a tiny, terrified security guard. Then I'd lock myself in the bathroom and sit on the closed toilet lid playing games on my phone until I heard Miles come home. The bathroom was my safe spot. Small, bright, a lock, solid walls. And if I sat with my back against the tub, nothing could come up behind me. The rest of the house always felt like it had too many corners. Too many dark little angles where something could just be. So one day, I'm in there like usual. I don't know, maybe an hour had passed. I'm trying to act normal, trying to pretend I'm not listening for every creak. And then I hear the side door, the one that leads from the garage into the house. It made this specific squeal when it opened, a sound I could recognize in my sleep. Then I hear footsteps, heavy, familiar steps moving into the kitchen. I hear keys hit the table. And then, this is the detail that still makes my stomach twist. I hear this loud, obnoxious burp. And I know that sounds funny, but it was so Miles. Like, when you live with someone long enough, you know their little sounds, their rhythm, the way they move, even their gross habits. I remember thinking, oh, thank God. Just instant relief, like my whole body unclenched at once. I set my phone down and stood up, finally ready to unlock the door and stop hiding like a lunatic. But the second my fingers touched the doorknob, something inside me just slammed on the brakes. It's hard to explain without sounding insane, but it was like hearing a song you know by heart. Only one note is slightly off. Close enough that you recognize it, but wrong enough that your skin crawls. Everything I just heard felt staged, like an imitation that didn't understand the real habits behind the sounds. Miles almost never came in through the garage. He used the front door, always. And he didn't toss his keys on the kitchen table. He kept them in his room. Little details, but they mattered. Suddenly, it all felt like someone had copied my brother from memory without actually knowing him. So I didn't unlock the door. Instead, I texted him, "Are you home?" He replied immediately, "No, leaving practice now." And I swear to you, my blood turned to ice. Because the moment I read that message, every sound in the kitchen stopped. Not gradually, not like someone walked away, just off. Like someone hit mute, and then I heard the kitchen stools scraping across the tile. Not a shove, not an accident. It sounded like someone was lifting one edge and walking it, dragging it carefully out toward the living room. Slow, deliberate movement in an open-concept house where there's nowhere to hide. I texted Miles back with shaking hands. There's someone in the house. Right after that, my dog, Nova, jumped onto the couch. I heard the cushions squeak, that familiar vinyl-ish sound, and then she started growling. Not her normal, someone's at the door growl. This was deep, ugly, like she was looking straight at something she couldn't understand. I'm in the bathroom, silently crying, gripping the knife so hard my hand cramped. I remember pressing my free palm against my mouth to keep myself from making any noise at all, because suddenly, it felt like whatever was out there was listening. Then the thumping started. And this is the part that messes with me, because what I'd heard before sounded like my brother. Normal, familiar. but now it sounded like someone much bigger was moving through the house. Heavy steps, faster, angrier. Things shifting, bumping, like objects were being jostled or tossed. And Nova was barking like crazy, barking the way she did when she truly wanted something gone. I thought about calling the police, but my brain kept spiraling. What if they come and there's nothing? What do I even say? Hi, my house is pretending to be my brother. So I stayed there, trapped between terror and embarrassment, waiting for something to happen. Minutes passed like hours. And then Miles texted, "I'm home, walking in now." And, no joke, the noise stopped the second that message came through. Like it had been waiting for that moment. I heard the front door open. I heard Miles's real voice, slightly muffled, calling, "Hello?" And then, confused, "Is someone here?" That was the first time I could breathe. I unlocked the bathroom door and stepped out, expecting the house to look wrecked. I was bracing myself for the aftermath. The overturned stools, the scattered stuff, anything that proved I wasn't imagining it. But everything was perfect. The kitchen stools were where they always were. The table was clean, nothing on the floor, no signs of anything being moved, tossed, or touched. And the garage door? The one I heard open? Locked. From the inside. Unmoved. The only proof I had, the only proof, was Nova, frozen on the couch with her fur standing up, eyes wide, trembling like she'd just seen something she'd never forget. That happened almost 10 years ago, and it still makes my throat tighten when I talk about it. Because whatever that was, it didn't just make random noises. It copied someone I trusted. It tried to lure me out. And when it realized I wasn't coming, it got angry. I'm not an expert, and I'm not going to pretend I know exactly what it was. Mimic. Something darker. Something we don't have a name for. I just know the feeling of it. That artificial, almost human wrongness. And I know this. If my gut hadn't stopped my hand on that doorknob, I don't like to think about what might have happened if I'd stepped out. Okay, so I need to take you back to Yosemite Valley. Late summer, 1989. Just after we got married. Like, brand new married. We'd said our vows in that little valley chapel the night before, and the next night, around midnight, we got this spontaneous, ridiculous idea. Let's go for a swim in the Merced River. It was me and my wife. Let's call her Marissa. And we were feeling untouchable in that newlywed way, you know? Giddy. A little reckless. The park was quiet, and it's Yosemite. You can be out at any hour, no curfew or anything. I'd grown up coming to these spots with my family, so I felt like I knew the area like the back of my hand. We parked off Northside Drive, just east of Bohono Bridge, and there wasn't a single other car. Not a light. Not even the sense that anyone else existed out there. We grabbed towels, a blanket, flashlights, and started down this little dirt path, maybe 30 yards through trees to the sandy edge by the water. And halfway down, I swing my flashlight left. And there are two men standing just off the trail. Tall, still, side by side like they'd been placed there. I froze for half a second because, in the dark, your brain tries to turn things into anything except people. I shined the light right on them, realized, oh, guys, and I immediately dropped the beam and muttered this quick, embarrassed, sorry. They didn't move. They didn't nod. They didn't say anything. Not even a little, hey, or a shift of weight. Just statues. What freaked me out most was how formal they looked, like dark suits, or at least stiff, dressy clothing. It didn't fit the setting at all. Marissa didn't even notice them. She was already moving toward the sand. We reached the riverbank. The water was loud, Moonlight was coming through the trees in these broken silver sheets, and Marissa starts spreading the blanket out like it's the most normal midnight swim in the world. I sit down next to her, and then, from the trees on our left, a couple steps out. And I swear to you, they're dressed like they just came from a wedding. A bride and groom, full on. Not costumes, not casual. Wedding clothes. They stop at the river's edge about 10 yards from us, talking softly. I can't make out the words because of the river, but I can hear the tone, that low, private conversation. After a moment, they sort of angle toward us, like they're watching. And it hit me in this cold, crawling way. Are they talking about us? I turn and look back up the slope, and I can still see those two dark men near the trail. Same place, same posture. Then, on the right side, another figure comes out and steps onto this rock that juts into the water. And this guy, he starts moving in this hunched, exaggerated way, like an ape man. Arms loose, crouching, swaying, doing this threatening little performance. It wasn't playful. It felt directed. And my brain is scrambling, trying to make a normal explanation. Okay, maybe we interrupted something. Maybe it's some weird night game. Maybe there are more people than we thought. But the feeling in my body was pure alarm, like we were surrounded. Marissa, somehow, is still trying to treat it like nothing. She's like, well, I guess swimming is off, kind of shrugging. Then she goes, super casually, I left the cigarettes in the car. Can you grab them? And I snapped, like not at her, but just the request landed wrong. I did not want to walk back up that path past those two silent men, leaving her alone with the wedding couple and the crouching rock guy. But I didn't want to sound afraid, so I stood up all annoyed and dramatic, like, fine, I'll get them. I walk back up, get to the car, grab the cigarettes, and then I do something I hadn't planned on doing. I pull it out. And when I shut the trunk, I make a big, deliberate noise, like, listen up, everyone. I go back down and stick the sword in the ground near our blanket, like I'm planting a flag. Marissa looks at me like I've lost my mind. What are you doing? And I said, loudly, something along the lines of, when people sneak around and won't speak to you out here at night, I want them to know I'll defend us if they try something. Even saying it now, I cringe a little. It wasn't me. It was fear trying to wear a tough guy mask. Marissa was stunned, like, did I just marry a lunatic? And after another minute, we decide to leave. We pack up fast, get back to the car, and drive away. And again, there are no other vehicles, no headlights, nothing. Just us and the dark road. We drive down El Portal Road toward Cascades Picnic Area, another river spot I knew well. And I'm thinking, okay, that first place was a fluke. This one is farther out. Surely it's empty. The parking lot is empty, no cars, until our headlights sweep across a picnic table. And there are people sitting there in the dark. Not lit by anything, just there. We both saw them, clear as day in the headlights. We look at each other like, seriously? But we decide to go to the beach anyway and just keep to ourselves. This time I leave the sword in the car, trying to behave like a normal human. We start down the wider trail, maybe 100 yards through the woods. Moonlight is enough that you can see the path. And up ahead, slightly off the trail, there's a woman standing still. She's wearing this ornate white gown, and the closer we get, the more elaborate it looks. Veil, lace, pearls, like something from another era. She's pretty, but older, and she has this calm, placid smile. What made my skin go cold is that she looked like she had this pale blue-white glow. Not a flashlight glow, just a wrong kind of brightness. I'm thinking, I'm about to walk right past her. What do you even say? Marissa is quiet, and I can tell she doesn't want to set me off. because she already thinks I'm spiraling. When I'm right beside the woman, I look her straight in the eyes and manage this small, polite, trembling, "Hello." She keeps smiling, doesn't answer, just watches me pass. A few steps later, Marissa says, totally baffled, "Why did you just say hello to a tree?" I whip around, and my stomach drops, because where the woman was is a dead tree stump, pale in the moonlight. That's it. No veil, no face, no lace, just a stump catching light. I actually jumped, like my body couldn't accept the switch. And I felt humiliated and dizzy at the same time. Like, am I losing it? I know what I saw. I know it. I tell Marissa, I thought it was a woman in a dress. She gives me that skeptical newlywed look that says, "Okay, honey, sure." We keep walking, and now I start noticing shapes, dark figures, standing off to the sides of the trail between the trees. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to be there. I don't even shine my light at them this time. I just ask Marissa, very quietly, "Do you see them?" She says no, and she's getting irritated, like, "Why are you seeing things?" And that's when I start to get defensive. Because it's one thing to be scared. It's another to be told you're imagining everything while your gut is screaming. I even remember thinking, bizarrely, that maybe I'd been reading too much mystic stuff, like I'd opened some mental door and now I was noticing things you're not supposed to notice. It sounds silly, but when you're in that moment, your brain reaches for any explanation. I stop at the top and look down. And there are two figures near a fallen log in the river, doing something. Fishing, maybe? At 1 a.m.? I don't know. One of them has this red glow on his face, like a cigarette ember. I point it out again. Marissa says she sees nothing. And God, this is where I lost my composure. I snapped, "Oh yeah? Then what the hell is that?" And I swing my big flashlight beam down onto them. The instant the light hits, the figures turn. Fast. Too fast. And they glare up at us. And I felt this immediate surge of danger, like a cornered animal realizing it's been spotted. They were upright, but bulky, blacker than the dark around them. And the way they moved, it wasn't human. Marissa grabs my arm hard. "We need to go. Now." Later she told me when one of them looked at her, its head turned in this twisting way, like it wasn't limited by bones the way we are, like a snake. We turn and start back toward the car, and that 100-yard trail suddenly feels like a mile. And I remember telling her, through clenched teeth, "Don't run. If we run, they'll chase. Just walk fast. Keep it together." We're both in panic, but we force ourselves to move quickly without sprinting, like we're pretending we're still in control. When we reach the parking lot, the picnic table where the people were, gone. Not shifted, not empty chairs, not they moved, just not there. There was a picnic table farther away on the opposite side, but it was empty, like we'd imagined the whole thing. We got in the car and drove off like our lives depended on it. And now, finally, Marissa admits it. She says, "Okay, I thought you were just freaking yourself out. But those things at the river, whatever they were, I saw them too." So we drive back toward the valley, and then we turn up the mountain road toward Tuolumne Meadows. We talk the whole time, comparing what we saw, trying to line it up. The bride and groom, the two shadow men, the crouching animal-like guy. And then we pull into a viewpoint overlooking the valley to catch our breath. The headlights sweep across the turnout. And they're there. All of them. As if they beat us there and took their places. Bride, groom, two shadow men, the animal guy. 15 feet in, standing like they were waiting, facing us. We both shout, just this raw shock. I'm like, "Do you see them?" Tell me you see them. Marissa says yes, and her voice is shaking. We don't even turn the car off. I just throw it in reverse and back out, and we're gone. At this point, it's not just fear, it's disbelief. Because how? How could they keep showing up ahead of us when we hadn't passed a single car for miles? How could they possibly know where we were going? Maybe 45 minutes later, sometime between 2 and 3 a.m., we pass a little ranger-style cabin or park building area. Porch light on, and standing in that cone of light like a staged tableau. Bride, groom, 2 shadow men, the animal guy. I remember Marissa making this strangled sound, like her brain couldn't process it anymore. And I couldn't either. It was beyond spooky. It was impossible. We kept driving for what felt like forever, seeing weird shadows in the trees, some of which might have just been our terrified minds making patterns out of darkness. Hard to know anymore. The last thing I feel confident about, truly confident, happens near Tenaya Lake. We pull into the lot to rest for a minute. The area is open, clear, plenty of moonlight, no trees close by. Across the highway, there's this steep, rocky road cut leading up to a ridge, an awkward place where you wouldn't expect anyone to be. It gave me goosebumps all over again. But this time, we don't engage. We don't shine the light. We don't react. We just sit, breathe, and eventually drive away. When we finally reach the Tuolumne Meadows area and pull up near the camp store, dawn is starting to come in, gray light, the world returning to normal. And outside the store, there are figures sitting with their backs against the wall. And when I tell you the relief I felt, because they were just people, regular backpackers, waiting for morning. You could tell immediately. The way they shifted, the way they looked up, the way the world fit around them. After hours of feeling like we were being haunted by something that didn't belong, it was like stepping back into reality. And that was it. That was the end of the first night of our honeymoon. This long, bizarre, terrifying procession of silent figures and wedding clothes and impossible reappearances. I've spent decades turning it over. Ghosts, residual hauntings, folklore stuff, aliens, tricks of light, shared panic. I've heard every suggestion, and honestly, I still don't know. But here's the strange part. Nothing actually harmed us. No one touched us. No attack. No injury. They just appeared, again and again, like they wanted us to notice, like they wanted us unsettled. And the older I get, the more I wonder if the real danger wasn't them. Maybe it was what fear did to us, how it narrowed our world until every shadow felt alive. Still, I can't lie. A part of me is grateful it happened, because life can get so clean and explainable, and then something like that reminds you there are corners of the world, of your own perception, that don't behave. And whenever I ask people if they've ever had something they can't explain, and they tell me no, I feel this odd sadness. Not because I want them scared, but because I think having one true mystery in your life changes you, even if you never solve it. So, we moved into this brand new apartment in London back in 2021. Fresh paint, new everything. Literally the first people to ever live here. We're right at the top, the only flat on our floor, which sounded like a dream at the time. The place is gorgeous. Huge rooms, high ceilings, these massive floor-to-ceiling windows that make it feel bright and open even when it's gray outside. But almost from the beginning, there's been this thing. At certain times of day, especially after dark, though not always, we hear running. Not vague creaks or old building noises, proper running. like someone sprinting down the hallway with purpose. It's loud enough that I've actually spun around mid-sentence because my brain just assumes someone's there. And my little one, Milo, he's always like, "Mummy, who's running?" in that matter-of-fact way kids have, like it's the most normal thing in the world. At first, I blamed the flat below us because they've got small kids. Easy explanation, right? Except we started paying attention, really listening, and it just didn't line up. And the thing is, this building is so well insulated. We don't hear our neighbors, like, at all. No TV through the wall, no footsteps, nothing. So why would we only hear that? Then for a while I convinced myself it was the roof. Maybe birds, maybe a fox? London has foxes everywhere. And sometimes, honestly, it did sound like it was coming from above, which made that theory feel even better because it was safer. Logical, contained, not creepy. But the more it happened, the less it felt like an animal. It wasn't scratching or scurrying. It was human pacing, like a person running. And the running isn't even the only part. There have been these little moments that make the air feel wrong, like shadows shifting where they shouldn't. Not dramatic ghost in the mirror stuff, just I'll catch movement out of the corner of my eye, like someone ducking back around a corner or walking past a doorway. Most of it happens in our main hallway. Coincidentally, of course, that's where the running always seems to be. More than once, I've been sitting watching TV with my back to the hall door, and I've felt someone behind me. Properly felt it. There have been times I've turned around and snapped, "Oh, just don't," thinking it's my partner, Ethan, trying to creep in and startle me. And then, nothing. Empty hall. Quiet. No Ethan. No one. One afternoon, this was in 2022, I walked into Milo's room. He wasn't in his cot. The room was tidy, normal, but the cot had been pulled out from the wall, like someone had dragged it forward. Not a few inches, enough that it stopped me in my tracks. And I remember standing there thinking, nope, that's not right, because I can barely shift it myself without really putting my back into it. Milo was too small at the time to do anything like that, and Ethan was at work. I even replayed my own morning. Did I move it? Did I catch it with my hip? Did I imagine it? But no, I would have noticed. It was moved. The honest truth is, neither of us has ever felt properly alone in this place. Not once. Even when I'm by myself in the daytime, sunlight pouring in, I still get that prickly feeling like I'm being quietly watched. Not threatened, just observed. Like something is sharing the space and doesn't feel any need to hide. And here's the part that makes it more complicated. I spoke to a colleague, Leah, because she's the type who goes to a medium regularly, and apparently, the woman has been uncannily accurate for her in the past. I wasn't even trying to be dramatic. I just asked for any ideas, like, what else could this be? And I mentioned, kind of casually, that I keep my dad's urn in the spare room. Leah's face changed instantly, like the color drained out of her, and she went, "You need to get rid of that." Which, absolutely not. No chance. That's my dad. I'm not getting rid of him like he's an old lamp. And the thing is, Milo talks about him. Like, talks about him. He calls him granddad sometimes, like he knows him. He's said he's seen him, that he's spoken to him. And I have photos up, and I bring my dad up naturally. Little stories, little memories. So it's not like he's never heard his name. But Milo seems to know him in a way that still makes my stomach flip, because my dad died when Milo was just a few months old, too young to remember anything. Yet sometimes Milo will say things with such certainty, like he's describing someone he genuinely knows. And none of this has ever felt sinister. That's what messes with me. There's no screaming, no slamming doors, no scratches, no "leave this place now" horror movie stuff. It's more like the atmosphere is off. The vibe is wrong. Like something's slightly out of alignment, and your body notices before your brain can explain it. We're actually selling the apartment now, partly for practical reasons. But if I'm being real, we're just tired. Tired of that unsettled feeling. Tired of second-guessing every sound, every shadow, every little movement in the hallway. And I keep coming back to the same thought. I just want to know what it is. Because if it's animals, fine. Tell me it's animals and I'll sleep better. If it's the building settling, great. Show me where and why. If it's some weird acoustic thing, brilliant. I'll take it. But whatever the reason, this place has never felt empty. Not once. Okay, so before I jump in, you've got to know this about me. Sleep paralysis has been a weird little thing in my life for as long as I can remember. It's usually the same routine. I'll think I've woken up, but I can't move, can't talk, can't do anything except stare and wait it out. It's terrifying, but it's predictable. The very first time it happened, I was maybe 13, 14 at the most. I'd fallen asleep facing this dresser mirror, and when I woke up, I saw it. This shape behind me. Not a person exactly. More like a shadow wearing the idea of a person. No face, no details, just this heavy, dark presence that felt way too close. Then I got older, and the sleep paralysis would still happen once in a while, but I never saw that shadow again. Not for years. Honestly, I started to think it was just my brain doing brain things. Fast forward to now. I'm 18, and last weekend I went out with my boyfriend, Eli, to hang at his friend Mason's place. They live out in the middle of nowhere, and those two are the type who always have some insane story. Lights flickering, footsteps when nobody's there, stuff like that. And I'll admit it, I get curious. I'm that person. So I brought this old spirit board I'd had for months. It had basically become wall decor because every time I tried it, nothing happened, and I'd started to feel kind of silly for even owning it. Late that night, like after midnight, we ended up wandering around outside. Not exactly on train tracks like a horror movie, but along this quiet service path near them where the rails run through. There's this abandoned stretch nearby, half-collapsed sheds, old signs, that kind of forgotten place vibe. We stopped there, and Mason and I decided to try the board, just for fun. Eli hung back, messing with his phone light and laughing at us. And listen, I know. First mistake, only 2 people on the planchette. Second mistake, doing it out there in the dark like we're asking the universe to mess with us. I did the basic question, the one everyone does. Is there anyone here who wants to talk to us? At first, it didn't move. I remember thinking, see, told you, it's nothing. Then the planchette started sliding, slow, deliberate. It spelled G-E-T-O. And I swear to you, my stomach dropped so fast it felt like I missed a step on a staircase, because we both knew what it was going to say. I didn't even let it finish. I yanked my hands back and blurted out, "Goodbye," like I was slamming a door in someone's face. Mason did the same, and we just looked at each other for half a second like, did that just happen? And then we basically power walked back like our lives depended on it, trying to laugh it off, but not really laughing. The rest of the night was normal enough. And honestly, part of me still tried to rationalize it. Like, maybe Mason pushed it. Maybe we nudged it without realizing. Maybe my brain just wanted a scary moment. But then the next night happened. I was home alone. Totally alone. I got in bed and started praying, quietly, just trying to calm myself down. I remember feeling my body relax, and I guess I drifted off mid-prayer. That's when it hit. That awful, familiar waking up feeling. Except, I didn't wake up. And there it was, the shadow. Only this time, it wasn't just a faceless shape in the background. It was closer, right there. And it had eyes. I know how that sounds, but I swear, eyes. Not normal eyes, just these focused points that felt like they were looking into me, not at me. And here's the part that messed with me. This didn't feel like my usual sleep paralysis. Usually I'm frozen. This time I was fighting, like I was flailing and trying to shove it away and begging, actually begging, please let me wake up. And then suddenly I did. I sat up, breathing like I'd run a mile, and I remember actually saying out loud, "That was so weird. I hate this." Like I was trying to make it smaller by naming it. Eventually I fell back asleep. But then, later, maybe an hour or so after, I woke up again. And this one was worse. Same thing. I'd been praying and drifted off without finishing. And then my eyes opened, and I knew instantly it was happening again. The shadow was there in the same place, like it had been waiting, like it never left. But this time it wasn't leaning toward my face. It was leaning toward my ears, like it wanted to speak right into them, or crawl inside my head through them. I don't know. I just know I was horrified in a way that made my whole chest ache. I fought it. I was pushing and kicking and trying to get away. I could feel myself moving, but I couldn't tell if I was actually moving in my bed or if it was all happening inside my brain. It felt real either way. And it talked. Not like a normal voice, more like the idea of words pressed into my mind. And it told me, "I'm keeping you here forever." I started crying. Full-on crying, pleading, bargaining, like you do when you're terrified and your logic has completely clocked out. I remember saying, "Please, I have work in the morning. I can't stay here, I can't." Like that was going to matter to whatever it was. And then, this is the part that makes me feel sick even saying it. I panicked so badly that I tried to negotiate. I told it, if it let me wake up tonight, it could come back tomorrow. The second the words left my mouth, I woke up. I shot upright, gasping. My cheeks were wet. My body felt like it had just been through something. And my room looked normal, but everything in me felt wrong. Like I'd opened a door I didn't know how to close. I called Eli afterward, and he tried to comfort me, but even he admitted he'd been having these vivid nightmares since that night we messed around outside. He said maybe it's night terrors, maybe stress, maybe our brains latched onto a creepy moment and ran with it. And I want to believe that. I really do. But it doesn't feel like my normal sleep paralysis anymore. It feels like something is responding, like it's getting closer, like it recognizes me now. And now I'm sitting here thinking about what I said, what I offered, when I was scared out of my mind. Because what if it actually does come back tomorrow? And what if next time I don't wake up? Have you ever met someone who just isn't scared of the paranormal at all? Like, not even a little? Because I swear, I stumbled into that kind of person, and it still makes me laugh when I think about it. So, I'm from Finland, and a while back, I started dating this wonderful single dad named Mikko. The first time I visited his place, I honestly felt like I'd stepped into a storybook. He lives in this ancient farmhouse he inherited from his grandparents. One of those big, weathered homes that looks like it's been quietly watching the world go by for generations. And here's a funny detail. His family's been on that land for so long that his last name is actually the same as the name of the little village nearby. Like the whole area and his family are basically stitched together. It made everything feel even more rooted. Like the house didn't just belong to him, he belonged to it too. Inside, it's like a living museum, but not in a dusty, creepy way, more like warm and charming. Old wooden trunks, embroidered linens, antique tools, faded photos and frames that have been touched by 100 hands. And somehow, he's managed to blend it all with modern life. Coffee machine on a vintage table, a smart TV sitting under a creaky old beam, like it's the most natural thing in the world. After we'd been together for a while, Mikko asked me to move in. I was thrilled. truly. The house, the garden, the whole property. It felt magical. He takes such good care of everything, too. The yard is always tidy, the paths are swept, flowers everywhere in summer, and even in winter it has this cozy, glowing feeling. It's the kind of place where you half expect to see little lanterns hanging in the trees. But, yeah, there's also a different kind of fairy tale living there, because I'm pretty sure we weren't alone. It started with little things, random thumps when nobody was upstairs, a cupboard door that would be slightly open even though I knew I'd shut it, something falling off a shelf for no reason. And at night, this was the worst part for me, I'd hear what sounded like slow footsteps, like someone walking down the hall while the whole house was asleep. At first, I tried to act normal. I didn't want to be the nervous new person in the old house, you know? So I'd just quietly panic on the inside. Then one afternoon, we're sitting in the living room. I'm in this old rocking chair trying to get some work done on my laptop. Miko is across the room doing his own thing, completely relaxed. And suddenly, out of nowhere, the living room door swings open with this long, dramatic creak. I'm not proud of this, but I basically launched out of the chair like it had bitten me. I pointed at the door with wide eyes and went, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And Miko, without even looking up properly, just goes, "Yeah, old house." Like he was commenting on the weather. Then he smiles, all casual, and adds, "Could be my great aunt stopping by." I just stared at him like, "Excuse me? Did you just make a joke about a ghost like it's a neighbor dropping off cookies?" Later that night, we're in the kitchen making tea, our little routine. The kettle's humming, the mugs are out, everything calm. And I finally say it. I'm like, "Okay, I need to talk about something. I think this house is haunted." And this man, this absolute weirdo in the best way, doesn't argue, doesn't dismiss me, doesn't do the whole, "It's the wind, it's the pipes, you're imagining it" thing. He just nods, like I've said something completely reasonable, and goes, "Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. The house is over 100 years old, and we've got records of my family living around here for centuries." And he shrugs, and says, "If they're here, they're my ancestors. Why would they want anything bad for us?" That is not the kind of comfort I expected. I thought he'd reassure me by saying ghosts aren't real. Instead, he basically said, "Oh yeah, they're real, and they're probably family." And the strangest part? It actually made me feel a little better. Not totally better, I still jump at noises, I'm not going to lie. But his calmness is so steady it's contagious. Like he's lived with these sounds his whole life and filed them under normal farmhouse stuff. Plus maybe grandma. So I have to ask you, have you ever met someone like that? Someone who can sit in a creaky old house full of footsteps and mystery and just sip their tea like, "Yep, that's probably a relative." Okay, so before I start, I have to tell you, this isn't my story. It happened to my Aunt Marisol, and she's told it so many times that it feels like it lives in our family's bones. This was in northern Mexico back in the late 80s. Marisol was the kind of teenager who thrived on trouble, always sneaking out, always daring somebody to do something ridiculous, always acting like nothing could touch her. My mom, her little sister Lucia, was the complete opposite. Quiet, careful, the kind of kid who apologized when someone else bumped into her. One afternoon, Marisol had a few girls from school over. They were hanging out in their bedroom, doing each other's hair, flipping through glossy magazines, laughing at boys, normal teen stuff. And of course, Lucia kept hovering, begging to stay. She was that annoying little sister who didn't want to be left out of anything. At some point, one of the friends, Roxana I think, unzips her bag and pulls out this homemade spirit board. Not a fancy store-bought one, just cardboard with letters and numbers drawn on it, and a little cutout piece they used like a pointer. Marisol and her friends lose it, giggling like it's the most thrilling thing in the world. Everyone's leaning in, daring each other to touch it, except Lucia. Lucia immediately goes pale and starts whispering, "No, no, don't do that. That's a bad idea. Please don't mess with that." But you know how teenagers are. The more someone begs you to stop, the funnier it becomes. So they start playing. And it's not even respectful. It's teasing, mocking. They're asking dumb stuff like, "What's your name? Why aren't you answering? Are you scared? What do you look like?" They're laughing the whole time, rolling their eyes, acting like they're too grown to be afraid of anything. And nothing happens. Not a twitch, not a scrape, not a single spooky moment. So after a while they get bored and toss the board aside, like it was just another toy, and move on with their afternoon. But that night, this is the part that still makes my skin tighten. Marisol wakes up sometime after 2 in the morning. She's in bed, and she shares the room with Lucia and 2 of their brothers. The room is dark, still, quiet in that heavy middle-of-the-night way. She wakes up with this awful, sinking feeling in her stomach, like dread, but physical, like your body knows something before your brain catches up. She's lying on her side facing the wall, so her back is to the rest of the room, and right away she realizes she can't move. Her arms won't budge. Her legs won't budge. She can't even turn her head. Marisol had experienced sleep paralysis before, so she recognizes what it is. But she said this felt different. The fear was sharper, meaner, like something was in the room with her, not just in her head. Minutes pass, long minutes, and she's trying so hard to force her body to respond, to wiggle a finger, to make a sound, anything. And then she feels it. Her mattress dips, slowly, right behind her, like someone is carefully sitting down on the edge of the bed. She can't turn around. She can't see. She can only feel that pressure, that weight, settling in beside her like it belongs there. She starts panicking, inside her own body, trapped, breathing fast, praying, trying to scream and realizing she can't. And then she hears a man's voice. Not one of her brothers, not her father, not anyone who should have been in that room. It's right behind her, and it says, so calmly, so cruelly, and the worst part is the tone, like it's amused, like it's repeating something she'd already said earlier, throwing it back at her. "Turn around," it says again. "Go on." Marisol told my mom she felt like her heart was going to burst out of her chest. She tried to pray, but her thoughts were tangled. She tried to move, but nothing worked. And then, finally, something breaks, like the spell cracks. She lets out this screaming, full-body, blood-curdling scream that jolts everyone awake. Her brothers jump up, my mom bolts upright, someone flips the light on, and suddenly the room is chaos. Everyone asking what happened, everyone crowding around her bed. And Marisol, shaking, drenched in sweat, just blurts out that it was a nightmare, that she must have been dreaming, that it was nothing. But the next day, when the sun was up and the house felt normal again, she pulled Lucia aside and told her everything in a quieter voice, like she didn't want the walls to hear. And ever since then, this is what sticks with me. Marisol has been terrified of those boards, not in a playful way, in a serious, don't even bring it in my house way. Even now, decades later, she's the one who warns all of us, me, my sister, all the cousins, every time someone brings it up like it's a joke. She always says the same thing, real soft but dead serious. Don't invite something to speak if you're not ready for it to answer. Before I tell you this, I just need you to understand something, okay? I don't drink, I don't do drugs, and I'm not someone who has hallucinations or anything like that. I've replayed this 100 times, and I still don't have a neat explanation for it. So, this happened really recently. It was a Sunday night, technically Monday morning, and I met up with my ex. I'll call him Cal. It was around 12:45 a.m., and yeah, of course it was one of those nights where the moon was ridiculously bright. Not quite full, but bright enough to make everything feel exposed and eerie at the same time. We ended up in this little park near some houses. Not a massive place, but it has this trail that curves, and the trees sort of lean in over it like a tunnel. There's a bench right where the path bends, and once you're in that spot, it feels secluded, like you've stepped into another pocket of the world. We were talking for maybe 45 minutes, just standing there in the dark, having one of those conversations that's half closure, half reopening a wound. And at some point, I noticed movement further down the path. Shapes, really. I assumed it was a couple walking dogs. We couldn't see them clearly because of the trees, but every now and then we'd hear a little jingle, like tags clinking, and faint footsteps near the bench area. Then, out of nowhere, we heard a man scream. And I don't mean a startled shout. I mean this raw, ripping scream like someone was being hurt badly, like pain you can't control. It wasn't "help me," it was just agony. The kind of sound that makes your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. Cal and I looked at each other and immediately bolted. No hesitation. We ran out of the park so fast, I'm surprised we didn't trip over the uneven path. The scream kept going behind us, echoing through the trees, and it honestly sounded like the man was being dragged or torn up. Not stabbed, not punched. Mauled is the only word that fits, and that's what freaks me out. Because this is the UK. Your brain scrambles for something logical, like fox? But I've never heard anything like that, and I've never known a fox to do that to a grown man. We got out near the gate, onto the pavement, and we just stood there, breathing hard, trying to process what we'd just heard. Cal completely froze, like his body just locked up. I had my phone out, thumb hovering over the emergency call screen. It was around 1:50 a.m. by then, and the screaming didn't stop. It went on for another, 5 minutes, maybe closer to 8. Long enough that it stopped feeling like a moment and started feeling like a nightmare you can't wake up from. And Cal actually took a step like he was going to go back in, like instinct kicked in, maybe to help, maybe to check, and I grabbed his arm and said, "No, absolutely not." Because whatever was doing that to someone, if it could make a grown man make that sound, what were we supposed to do? Run in with our hands? Get ourselves added to it? It sounds harsh, but it was survival. Pure survival. Then, suddenly, silence. Like someone hit a switch. And in the quiet, all we could hear was this tiny dog barking. Little yappy barks. Like almost normal. Which made it even worse somehow. Because where did the man go? How do you go from that level of screaming to nothing? And then we heard a woman's voice. That's the part that made my curiosity override my fear for a second. I know, stupid. But it was like my brain needed to see something to match the sound. So we walked along the outside of the park, staying on the pavement. We didn't go back in, just moved to where we could see the area near that bend. The park has these small gates, maybe chest height, and we were well outside them. Far enough away that I felt sort of safe. And that's when I saw her. A woman standing there, kind of still, like she was waiting. I couldn't make out her face, just her outline under the dim light. And near her, on the ground, there was this black shape. At first I thought it was a person lying down, but then it moved. And I swear to you, the way it moved was wrong. It didn't move like a dog running or a person crawling. It was like this thick shadow slid along the ground, like a body dragging itself, but smoother. Almost like something being pulled without legs. Like ink spreading. Like slime, honestly. That's the closest comparison I have, even though it sounds ridiculous. Then it rose. Not all at once, kind of unfolding, and when it stood up, the shape changed. It became this big dog-like figure, like the silhouette of a shepherd or something similar. Tall at the shoulders, solid, completely dark. And the moment it stood, it turned, like it knew we were there. I remember being weirdly stuck, like my body forgot how to react because my brain was trying to label what I was seeing. It's just a dog. It's just a dog. Except, it didn't feel like just a dog. It felt like something that had been pretending to be part of the night and then decided it didn't need to hide anymore. And then it started coming toward us. Slowly at first. Not charging, just closing the distance. And the thing is, we weren't even inside the park. We were outside the gates, across the pavement, nowhere near that bench. But it was still moving toward us like we'd stepped into its space. I didn't even have to say anything to Cal. We looked at each other and we both ran, immediately. Full sprint. No, should we? No, maybe it's fine. Just gone. We ran through side streets, cutting corners, not even caring where we were going as long as we weren't there. I kept looking back and couldn't see much, but I didn't stop. I didn't slow down until my lungs burned. And even now, what messes with my head is the questions. Where did the screaming man go? Why did it end so suddenly? Why was the woman so calm? Why was there only a tiny dog barking after all that? And if her big dog attacked someone, or attacked the small dog, why would she just stand there like nothing happened? Why would she stay in the park at all after hearing those sounds? And why did that thing move toward us? I've had friendly dogs come up to me before, sure, but in daylight, wagging their tail, normal dog behavior. This was different. This was 2 a.m., in the dark, and it felt purposeful. Like it wasn't curious, it was approaching. I don't expect anyone to solve it. I just needed to say it out loud in a way that matches how it felt. Because I can't make sense of it. And that's the part that still makes my skin go cold when I think about it. Okay, so I need to tell you this like I lived it, because I did, and it still gives me that weird, tight feeling in my chest. 2 things happened within 3 days, and I live in the capital, huge city, loud all day, but at night you can actually see the outline of the mountains wrapping around it. Out here, people talk about strange lights sometimes. It's not common, but it's also not unheard of. And the part that matters is, it's almost always out there, toward the mountains or the hills that slope down toward the coast. Always distant, always, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. For context, because this didn't start out as the main event, there were a couple sightings recently that felt like the usual kind of weird. Back in mid-October, around 2 in the morning, I saw this bright crimson light hanging over the mountains. Not blinking, not drifting, just sitting there like someone pinned it to the sky. It stayed for maybe 8 minutes, perfectly still, and then it didn't fade, it didn't move away, just gone, like a switch flipped. Then, a few weeks later, early December, I caught an amber-colored light shooting across the sky around 9:20 at night. It was fast. So fast I barely had time to register it before it vanished. 2 seconds, maybe less. And honestly, sightings like those, that's the kind of thing people around here shrug at. Huh, that was odd. Then you go back inside. But what happened after that wasn't like that, not even close. Because the other stuff is always miles away, right? Out over the hills, far enough that your brain can keep a little distance from it. This time it wasn't far. This was right above me. It was the 16th, early evening, like 8:45. I was walking out to grab some bread and something quick for dinner. I always look up when I'm outside at night. It's a habit. I love the sky. It calms me down. So I'm walking, I glance up, and I just freeze. I literally said out loud, "What the hell is that?" There was this tiny orb, like a little bead of light, moving overhead. Not high like a plane, closer. Close enough that it felt personal, like it was in my space. At first I tried to be logical. My brain went, "Okay, drone," because what else are you supposed to think? But then the orb did something that made my stomach drop. A second light appeared, almost like it split off from the first one, like the original light produced another one. And now there were two, gliding in the same direction, kind of slow, heading south over the rooftops. And then, no drift, no speeding away, nothing dramatic. They just vanished, like they were never there. And the craziest part is, I wasn't alone. 3 other people were outside. I could tell they'd seen it because they had that same expression I'm sure I had. Mouth slightly open, eyes following the sky, that silent question written on their faces. Did you see that? Nobody even really spoke. We just shared that moment of disbelief, and then everyone sort of scattered back into their own lives like we hadn't all just watched reality glitch for a second. But I didn't go back to normal. Ever since that night, I've had this feeling, like the air changed, like something noticed us noticing. And every night since then, I've caught myself staring at dark windows, listening harder than I should, feeling like I'm being watched. And then, 3 nights later, it got worse. It was around 3:10 in the morning. I was in bed, watching something low on the TV, trying to keep the room calm. Elena went to the bathroom, and when she came back, she paused by the window. We live on the 4th floor, so we can see the street pretty clearly. She looked out for a second, and then she turned to me. And I swear to you, the look on her face was the exact look I had when I saw the lights. She looked back out the window like she needed to confirm it. Then she faced me again and said, quietly but very certain, "I saw something weird, walking across the street." Instant chills, because I already had that being watched feeling, but I wasn't expecting her to say that. I asked her what she meant, and she described it as this small, dark figure, like a silhouette, moving fast on 2 legs. Not a person she could make out, no details, just shape and motion. And here's the part that made my skin crawl. She said it was heading toward the same direction, the same area, where I'd seen the orbs disappear a few nights earlier. So of course I went to the window. I had to. I needed to see something, anything, some rational explanation. But I didn't see the figure. What I did see was the building across the street, this new apartment block that's still empty, not officially open yet. Dark, unfinished looking. And in that darkness I kept catching movement, little shadowy shifts, like something ducking around corners. Not one clear shape, more like multiple quick movements. The kind you almost convince yourself you imagined, except it happened again and again. Like something was trying not to be seen, but also wasn't really leaving. It felt like watching, like we were the ones being watched. And we just stood there, silent, staring at this dead building at 3 in the morning, sick and exhausted, with the city completely still beneath us. Neither of us slept after that. And even now, telling you this, I can feel that same uneasy pressure in my chest, like the night didn't end when the sun came up. We have no idea what Elena saw. I don't know if it was a person, an animal, a trick of the light, or something else entirely. But I do know this. Whatever happened those nights didn't feel distant anymore. It felt close. It felt like it knew where we were. So, when I was little, we lived in this old two-story rental that never felt completely quiet, even when it was. We were upstairs, me, my parents, and my two half-sisters, and the landlord, Mr. Preacha, lived downstairs with his family. My mom, Lydia, always had this uneasy explanation ready. The place has bad energy. The house sat at the end of a narrow dead-end street, and straight ahead, almost like the house was staring at it, was a hospital. She hated that. Said it invited the wrong kind of traffic, if you know what I mean. The thing is, my parents came at all of this from totally different worlds. My dad, Thon Nguyen, is Buddhist, and when he was a boy in Myanmar, he trained as a novice monk for a while. Even now, he's the kind of person who walks into a room and instantly goes, "Something's off." Like he can feel a mood the way other people feel temperature. My mom and my sisters were Catholic, and honestly, they fought about everything. They could argue about a spoon. But the one thing they didn't argue about was this. Something strange was in that house. One of my sisters, Maris, was away at university most of the year and only came home for winter break and summer. Her room was at the end of the hallway, and I swear, it always felt colder there, like this thin, steady draft that didn't make sense. The window would be latched, the vent would be closed. Still, that air moved. Then one night, while she was home for break, she woke up and said it felt like someone shoved her down into the mattress. Like hands, like weight. She told us she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, and it was as if the air got pulled right out of her chest. When she finally snapped out of it, she was shaking so hard she couldn't even sit up. And she was very specific about one detail. She said she was sure it was a woman. Not a voice exactly, more like a certainty. A presence with a shape, even in the dark. Maris even believed it followed her back from a hotel she'd stayed at a week earlier, like she'd accidentally brought something home. I know. People say sleep paralysis, and I've read about that too. But what stuck with me was that she never had anything like that happen in her dorm. Not once. And not later in any of the apartments she lived in after. Only in that room. Only in that house. About a year later, everything fell apart in a very human way. My parents divorced. My mom and sisters moved out, and my dad stayed behind alone for a while. That's when things got louder. He told me he'd be sitting in the bedroom and hear someone in the kitchen softly calling his name. Thon. Like it was someone trying not to wake the neighbors. He'd walk out there and the whole place would be still. No TV, no radio. Just that heavy silence that comes after you know you heard something. And at night, he said he could feel two somethings enter the room. Not footsteps, not creaking floors, just the feeling of a presence crossing the threshold, the way you can tell someone is standing behind you even before you turn around. Eventually he moved out and found a small apartment on the other side of town. We all hoped it would end there. New place, new start. But then my grandfather, my dad's father, came to visit from Hong Kong. He slept on the sofa, and my dad dozed off in a recliner nearby. In the middle of the night, my dad jolted awake in that panicked, choking way, like he was drowning on dry land. My grandfather was wide awake, and the next morning, he told my dad something that still makes my skin prickle. He said he'd seen it, not a trick of light, not a passing car. A shape, lingering, pressed down over my dad like a weight. My grandfather asked him, very calmly, "Is this place clean?" After my grandfather left, it got worse. My dad said it became a nightly thing, this pressure, this suffocating feeling, like something was testing him. He'd hear cabinet doors shifting, like someone rummaging without actually opening them. Doors clicking, The kind of sounds that make you sit up and hold your breath because you're waiting for the next one. And my dad, he's always had a temper. When he gets scared, he gets angry. So he started yelling into the apartment, telling it to leave, demanding it stop. But that only seemed to provoke it. Not long after, he found out something the building manager hadn't mentioned. A man had died in that exact unit just months earlier. Heart attack. Alone. His wife and kids had left him not long before. And I remember thinking, of course that's the detail that makes my dad go quiet. Because it mirrored his life too closely. He'd just been left behind by his own family, living in the same kind of loneliness, in the same kind of room. A year after the divorce, my dad ended up needing major heart surgery himself, triple bypass. It felt like his life was echoing someone else's tragedy, like the walls were holding on to it and feeding it back. Now, today, he lives in a senior apartment complex, bright hallways, clean carpets, the kind of place you'd assume would feel safe. And he still swears these things happen. A few months ago, he called me late, sounding embarrassed but shaken. He said he'd been in the bedroom and heard someone in the kitchen. Light movements, like a person cooking. He went out to check and said the kitchen felt used, like someone had just been there. He even touched the refrigerator handle and said it felt slick, oily, like someone had handled it with greasy hands. There was oil spattered near the stove. A couple spice jars were tipped over, and one of his mugs on the counter had seasoning sprinkled into it, like someone absent-mindedly ruined it and walked away. No one else had keys. No staff had been inside. No explanation that made sense. He's also told me about little things that stack up. The elevator doors opening on their own from across the hall when no one is waiting. The feeling of being followed on the stairwell, like a presence keeping pace one step behind him. And I don't know how to wrap it up neatly, because I don't have a neat answer. I just know my dad has always been porous, somehow. Like the boundary between him and whatever else is out there is thinner than it is for most people. Maybe it's his history. Maybe it's his sensitivity. Maybe it's just bad luck and a mind that never stops scanning for danger. Or maybe some people really do attract things. And if any of this sounds familiar to you, if you've ever lived somewhere that felt like it had eyes, or had a family member like my dad, someone who seems to carry a shadow with them, please tell me I'm not alone in this. Hey, thanks for letting me ramble a little. I promise I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I need to lay this out the way it's actually been happening, because it's starting to scare me in a really specific way. So, my partner Caleb and I moved into this unit in a 4-unit house in a historic neighborhood. You know the kind. Old trees, creaky porches, pretty on the outside, and everything inside has that 1920s bones feeling. The place used to be one big house before it got divided up into separate units, probably decades ago. What we didn't know, what no one thought to mention, and what we only started hearing later, is that this house has a reputation. Apparently, before the current owner bought it in the 90s, it had a shady stretch of years. People around the neighborhood talk like it used to be a spot for all kinds of illegal business. Rumors of a makeshift brothel, drug dealing, the whole whispered lore thing. And the unit we moved into? We're the ones with the attic access, where, according to local gossip, a lot of the worst stuff supposedly happened. People even hint that there was violence here, like real violence. Not spooky house violence. The kind that leaves people feeling weird even after the story's done being told. But here's the thing. We didn't move in because we wanted a haunted house experience. We moved in because it was available. It was close to where we'd been living, and it seemed fine. What makes this harder to brush off is that we used to live nearby. We watched couples move into this exact unit over and over. Different faces, different ages, different vibes. and more than once it ended the same way. Sudden relationship chaos. Like messy fights out of nowhere, breakups that seemed too fast for people who had been fine, and then someone would be hauling boxes back out within a month or two. Caleb and I aren't superstitious, so we always chalked it up to coincidence, stress, money, whatever. Life happens. Until it started happening to us. Because I swear to you, we were solid. Like, the kind of relationship you protect with your whole chest. We're the couple our friends roll their eyes at because we communicate, we apologize, we check in, we do the work. We've always felt like a team. We've even joked we're annoyingly healthy. And then we moved in, late spring this year, and it was like someone quietly swapped our personalities when we weren't looking. Almost immediately, we started snapping at each other. Not normal bickering, I mean irrational, picking fights over nothing, misreading tone, feeling offended by tiny things, getting that sudden heat-in-your-face anger that doesn't even match what's happening. And it's not just one of us, it's both. Like we're both getting tugged into the same ugly current. Worse, we've both been having intense dreams, bad ones. The kind where you wake up with your heart racing and you're mad at the person next to you even though they didn't do anything. Dreams where the other person is cruel or distant or betraying you. Dreams that leave a residue. And here's the part that messes with my head the most. When we leave the apartment, like even just go sit in the car or walk a few blocks, something lifts. We can talk like ourselves again. We'll look at each other and be like, what was that? Why did I say that? Why did I feel like that? We're apologetic but also genuinely confused, like we're reviewing footage of two people we don't recognize. Then we came home, unlocked the door, and it was like the atmosphere tightened. Like we walked back into a room that doesn't want peace in it. And I know how that sounds. I do. If someone told me this story a year ago, I'd be like, okay, but are you sleeping enough? Are you stressed? Is it moving fatigue? And sure, moving is stressful, but this doesn't feel like stress. Stress makes you tired. This feels like something pressing buttons. On top of all that, there have been these small, creepy little things. Nothing movie level, but enough to make you freeze for a second. Cabinets we swear we closed sitting open when we come back into the kitchen. Couch cushions shifted in a way that doesn't make sense. And one day in the backyard, I touched the handlebar of an old bike we keep out there, and this weird, dark, oily gunk, like black residue, kind of spit out of the end. That one really got me, because it wasn't just, oh, maybe we forgot. It was physical, and it was gross, and it was sudden. Our dog Miso has been restless here too, pacing, staring down the hallway like he's listening to something. Not constantly, but enough that we've noticed, and we're not people who normally assign meaning to every little animal behavior. It just feels like the whole apartment has a hum to it, and none of us can fully relax. We've tried to do the responsible stuff. Therapy, long talks, being intentional, even praying, which we don't usually do as a go-to solution, but we're at that point where you start trying anything that might bring relief. And the scariest part is that we're starting to feel helpless. Not because we don't love each other, we do, deeply, but because we can't predict when we'll get pulled into that ugly version of ourselves inside these walls. And I want to be really clear, I'm not blaming Caleb. I'm not painting him as the villain. He's been acting unlike himself, and so have I. That's what makes it feel so wrong. We both keep looking back and thinking, that's not who I am. That's not how I love you. We're already trying to move out as soon as we can, like, actively. But until then, I don't know what to do. So if you're listening and you've been through something like this, something where a space seems to change people, what would you do? Would you cleanse it somehow? Ask someone to bless it? Open windows, burn something fragrant, put up protective stuff, whatever people do? I'm not above anything that's kind and harmless at this point. I just want us to make it through this with our relationship intact and with our sanity. Because I love him. I love us. And I hate the feeling that the moment we walk through our own front door, we're not fully in control of the story anymore. Okay, so I need to tell you what happened tonight, because I'm still kind of buzzing from it. I went to the cemetery to visit my friend, Ethan. He was buried earlier this week, Tuesday, and I've been going every day since. It's become this quiet little ritual, you know? Just showing up, sitting with him for a bit, talking like he can still hear me. I got there around 9:30-ish, maybe closer to 9:40 p.m. The cemetery is one of those you can actually drive through, and the burial tent was still set up from the service, so I did what I've been doing, parked near the back and walked over. Last night I went alone, no problems. No weird feelings, no odd sounds, nothing. Just sad, quiet, normal. Tonight I brought a friend with me, Maya, because it was a holiday night and I didn't really want to be out there by myself. We sat under the tent for a while. I even lit one of those tiny candles, the little metal ones, because I'd left a candle there the night before and it felt right to keep that going. We just talked softly, reminisced, sat in the cold for a bit. Honestly, the first part of the night felt peaceful. But when we finally stood up to leave, around 10:10, everything shifted. We started walking back toward my car, and that's when we heard it. This low, growling sound. Then barking. Not playful barking either, more like something warning you or guarding something. It was coming from deeper in the cemetery, somewhere between the rows. I remember stopping and doing that thing where you hold your breath without realizing it, like your body is trying to listen harder. Maya and I looked at each other like, "Did you hear that?" We didn't want to run. Running felt like the wrong move, so we just kept walking, faster but controlled, trying not to panic. And then we saw it. A big white dog, like big, shepherd-sized at least. But it wasn't solid white. There were darker patches along its side, like stains or spots. It didn't charge at us. It didn't even come toward us. It just paced back and forth, kind of sideways in the distance, like it couldn't decide whether to leave or stay. And the weirdest part was the way it felt. I know that sounds dramatic, but it didn't look like a normal dog. There was something off about its movements, too steady, too deliberate. Maya kept saying she could still hear it growling the entire time, even when it wasn't moving its mouth. We both turned our flashlights off after a second because, I don't know, instinct. Like we didn't want to draw attention to ourselves. Maya kept her eyes locked on the dog, and I kept mine fixed on my car like it was the only real thing left in the world. We kept walking. And then, this part still messes with me. The dog just wasn't there anymore. It didn't run behind a tree. There weren't bushes to disappear into. The cemetery is open, flat. You can see across it, and we were both watching it. 1 second, pacing. Next second, gone. We got to the car, and I swear I didn't feel relief until I clicked the lock and heard that little thunk. I sat there for a moment with my hands on the wheel like I'd forgotten what driving even was. And then, as I started backing out, we heard a woman scream, "Help!" Clear as day, not like a distant radio, not like someone's phone. It sounded outside, near the cemetery, close enough that my stomach dropped instantly. We didn't talk much on the way back, just silence and heavy breathing, and that feeling you get when something happens that you can't file away neatly in your brain. When we got to Maya's place, we finally got out, and that's when we noticed something else. On the trunk of my car, there were these long drag marks, like fingers had been pulled slowly across it. Not scratches like branches, more like oily, streaky lines. And on the passenger door, there were 2 clear fingerprints, like someone had pressed their fingertips right into the surface. Fresh, distinct. And I know for a fact they weren't there earlier, because I'm weirdly picky about my car being clean, and I would have noticed. We stood there staring at it like, what are we even looking at? And I hate saying this because it makes me sound like I'm trying to turn it into some big paranormal thing, but it genuinely felt connected. Like the night didn't end when we left the cemetery, it followed us right up to the driveway. We didn't even think to take pictures at the time. We were too shaken. It was only later, when I calmed down a little, that I realized how badly I wished I had proof of what we saw. So now I'm sitting here, trying to make sense of it. Was it just a stray dog and weird timing? Was it someone messing with us? Was the scream even real? Or did our brains just fill in the worst possibility because we were already scared? I don't know. All I know is that it didn't feel normal. And I can't stop replaying that moment where the dog simply vanished, like it was never there at all. Have you ever experienced anything like this? The growling, the feeling of being watched, the voice, any of it? Because I really, really want a normal explanation for what happened tonight. Welcome back, my friends, to the Paranormal M channel. It's freezing where I am. How's the weather where you are? Drop a comment below and let me know. Thanks for sharing your mysterious experiences with us, and don't hesitate to send in more new stories. Now, let's jump into today's mysteries. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Hey, so I've gotten a bunch of messages about my last post, and a few of the same questions keep popping up. I figured I'd just talk it out here, like we're sitting across from each other with a warm drink, and you're letting me ramble for a minute. Alright. First question I keep seeing: why don't you ask them for more information about their world? And I get why people are curious. I really do. But here's the thing. Most of the time, they're not from some far-off other world that they can describe like a vacation spot. They're here, in our world. The ones who haven't moved on? A lot of them have never seen anything beyond this place. So if I asked them about the other side, it'd be like asking someone who's never left their hometown what Paris smells like. Some spirits do drift in and out, like the kind that show up just to check on their sister, or their kid, or their best friend one last time. But the lingering ones are usually lingering for a reason. Second big question: do they get new abilities after they die? And is moving on a choice, or does something decide for them? Okay, so, the new abilities thing. People expect some upgrade package after death, like you unlock powers or something. But honestly, it's not like that. A lot of the ones who stick around don't even realize they're dead. They'll just keep doing what they've always done, walking down hallways, setting a table, waiting for someone who isn't coming. And yeah, that's when you'll see weird things like them drifting through a wall, or talking to someone who isn't physically there. It isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just sad, quiet, routine. Now, the ones who do know they're dead, those are the ones who can get playful or irritating. And by playful, I mean the kind of energy that loves flickering lights, tapping on windows, moving something small just to see if you'll notice. Some of them get a kick out of getting a reaction, not because they're monsters, because they're bored or bitter, or they've still got a personality, and that personality might be kind of a jerk. As for moving on, there isn't one single rule. It's different for everyone. Some move on right away, like the moment they're done here, it's like a coat drops off their shoulders and they're gone. No drama, no hanging around. They had no reason to stay. Others stick around because they're still attached to something. Unfinished business, guilt, love, confusion, fear. And the ones who don't know they're dead? They might only move once they finally complete whatever loop they're stuck in, or once someone helps them understand what happened. I knew one like that. His name wasn't Wyatt, but I'll call him Caleb. Caleb was stubborn. Not evil, not scary, just absolutely, deeply stubborn. He refused to move on because he was convinced he'd be punished or swallowed up or erased. He thought staying here, half present, half lost, was safer than whatever came next. And that's the part people don't always talk about. Fear keeps a lot of them here. Sometimes when a medium talks to a ghost who doesn't realize they're dead, it hits them like ice water. It can jolt them so hard they just blink out for a minute, like they pop out of existence and then come back disoriented. And if the person who confronted them is gone by then, that's when you get what I call wanderers. The confused ones who start actively searching for help because something inside them finally realizes, wait, something is wrong. Now, poltergeists, and then, yes, the last thing people always want to jump to, demons. Demons exist, and before anyone tries to twist my words, no, they're not typically skipping around pretending to be adorable little children, and they're not just randomly possessing every dusty doll in an antique store. Please don't come at me with that. I'm begging you. If something truly demonic latches onto a person or an object, it usually needs a way in, an opening, an invitation, a curse, a deliberate summoning by someone who thought they were being edgy and ended up being dumb. Sometimes they can be bound or trapped. Iron can help in certain cases, and so can specific protections, depending on what you're dealing with. But here's the honest truth. Most of the time, if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. They're not hanging around looking for strangers to ruin for fun. They react to provocation. They react to being called. They react to being messed with. So my advice is simple, and it's not even mystical advice. It's just practical advice. Don't invite things you don't understand into your home. Don't treat the unseen like a toy. And don't be an asshole. That's it. That's the whole rule. You know, when people talk about Hollywood, they usually mean the glossy version. The postcards, the premieres, the neon glow that makes everything look like it matters more than it does. But the Hollywood I remember? It was heavier. Like something that clung to you after the streetlights faded. Like you could still feel it on your skin even when you finally got back to your room and shut the door. I was younger then, hungrier. I'd walk into these rooms where ambition hung in the air thicker than cologne and champagne. Everybody smiling a little too hard. Everybody pretending they weren't scared. And during that time, I stayed at the Avalon Crest Hotel, one of those old places where the walls feel like they've heard too many secrets to ever really be quiet again. The moment I stepped into the lobby, I got this strange feeling, like the building noticed me. The carpet was this deep, dark pattern that almost looked like it was moving if you stared too long. And the whole place had that kind of hush beneath the noise, like history was sitting in the corner with its arms crossed, just watching. I wasn't sleeping much back then. Not real sleep. More like drifting off in scraps and waking up with my heart already running. The lobby downstairs always seemed awake, even at hours when it shouldn't be. And people would joke about it, you know? They'd say the hotel had regulars who never checked out. Old stars, old dreamers, the kind of people who gave everything to the city and didn't know how to leave. I laughed along, because I'm not easily shaken. Honestly, life had already shown me scarier things than a spooky hallway. But then one night, around 3:17 a.m., I remember because I looked at the clock like it had called my name. I woke up fully alert for no reason at all, just snapped awake. And the room felt occupied. Not in a dramatic way. More like when you walk into a room after an argument and you can still feel it in the air. The temperature had dropped, but it didn't feel like the AC. It felt intentional, like something had leaned close. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, back and forth right outside my door. Not the messy shuffle of someone drunk, not the quick rhythm of staff doing their rounds. This was measured, like whoever it was had nowhere to be, like they were taking their time on purpose. So I called out, "Hello?" Half annoyed, half trying to prove to myself that I wasn't rattled. The footsteps stopped instantly, and the silence that followed, it was so thick it almost pressed against my eardrums. I waited a few seconds, then swung the door open. Empty hallway. Just that faint buzz of lights overhead and the soft, swallowing quiet of carpet that eats sound. No shadow, no movement, nothing. I remember standing there thinking, okay, I'm exhausted. That's all this is. Because ambition does that to you. It starts haunting you from the inside when you've been running too hard for too long. But the next night, it happened again. Only this time, it wasn't outside. It was in the room. I was lying there, trying to force my eyes shut, when I heard a small sound, like a chair shifting, just a little. Like someone brushed past it without trying to be heard. And then that feeling hit me. The one that makes your skin tighten before your mind catches up. That sense of eyes on you. Not imagination. Not nerves. Something else. Something present. So I sat up, and I don't know why, but I spoke out loud. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just honest. I said, I'm only passing through. I'm not here to take anything that isn't meant for me. And listen. The room changed. The air warmed, like someone finally let out a breath they'd been holding. The pressure lifted off my shoulders so fast I almost laughed. It felt like whatever had been crowding the space simply stepped back. I slept after that, the whole night. Deep, clean sleep. No dreams, no jolting awake, nothing. And I left that hotel with a lesson I didn't expect to learn. Hollywood is full of spirits. Some are dead, sure, but plenty are walking around in designer shoes, still alive, still smiling. People who tied their entire worth to applause, to being famous, to being seen. And when the lights go out, they don't know who they are anymore, so they keep pacing the halls inside themselves, waiting for someone to open the door and tell them they mattered. I walked out of there knowing I didn't want to become that. I didn't want success to be the thing that trapped me. So yeah, that was my Hollywood story. Not glamorous, not shiny, just honest. A reminder that if you chase anything hard enough without staying grounded, it can start to own you, the same way any ghost story ever could. So, if you've seen Hamilton, here's the ghost story they don't put on stage. It's after midnight, when the financial district finally loosens its tie. The taxis thin out. The last bar doors click shut, and the whole neighborhood drops from a roar into this soft, constant electrical buzz, like the city is still awake, just whispering to itself. That's when Trinity Church changes. I'm not being dramatic. I mean, changes. The air gets sharper, like you just stepped into shade even though it's still summer. The iron gates give this slow, complaining creak, except there's no wind to blame it on. And the graveyard. The old stones in there seem to hold on to cold the way brick holds on to heat. Now, I've talked to people who work security nearby. No one likes to go on record, obviously, but quietly, off to the side, you'll hear the same thing. Guards requesting reassignment. Guards suddenly finding another job. guards refusing to take the late shift alone. Not because they saw something, because they heard it. Footsteps, not rushing, not stumbling. Measured, like someone knows exactly where they're going and is taking their time getting there. Gravel crunching in a steady back and forth near one particular spot. The grave of Elias Wainwright. Not a famous name the way people expect, at least not in textbooks. But if you know the city, if you know its bones, you know who I mean. The kind of man whose words built scaffolding for a whole nation and whose enemies hated him for it. They say he doesn't rest, and honestly, I believe it. Because some nights, only certain nights, the kind where the humidity sits heavy on your skin and the streetlights look a little too bright, you can stand close to his tomb and hear something underneath the silence. A voice. Low, urgent, fast, not singing, not performing, not charming anyone. Arguing, like he's mid-sentence in a debate that never ended, like he's still trying to win a point that matters more than sleep, more than death. And Trinity sits on ground that remembers the earliest blood of American politics, duelists and schemers, patriots and traitors, men who truly believed a sentence could be a weapon, that ideas could ruin you, that the right phrasing could kill. Elias believed that more than anyone, and his rival, Silas Crow, believed something else: survival. Here's the part that gets under my skin. There's an old account, handwritten, barely legible now, that describes the night after Elias was buried. One witness claimed they saw a second figure still there long after everyone left. Dark coat, hat pulled low, standing so still it didn't even look human at first. Just a shape where a person shouldn't be. And when someone tried to get closer, the figure didn't run, didn't turn, didn't step away. It simply disappeared, like the dark itself decided to close its mouth. Since then, people keep reporting the same thing: two presences, tied to the same patch of earth. Some nights, visitors swear they hear two sets of footsteps circling each other, one pacing quick and sharp, the other slower, like it's refusing to be hurried. Other nights, it isn't footsteps at all. It's whispers, thin, slicing little sounds that don't feel like wind or imagination. Accusations, justifications, half-finished sentences, like the speakers keep getting interrupted by the memory of what comes next. And then, this is what makes people back away without even realizing they've moved. A distinct metallic click, like a pistol being cocked. You wait for the shot. Your whole body braces for it, but it never comes. There's only the echo of that click, hanging in the air like a held breath. A phrase repeated again and again. Faint, but clear enough that once you hear it, you can't unhear it. I couldn't leave it unfinished. And then, after a pause, colder, calmer, almost bored, I made it out alive. So if you ever walk past Trinity late at night and get that prickling feeling between your shoulder blades, like you're being watched, don't spin around too fast. Because maybe Elias is still there, arguing with the world the way he always did. And maybe Silas is still there too, quietly defending himself. And maybe that duel is still happening, every night, just without witnesses. You know, there's this story I've carried around in my head for a while. One of those legends that feels like it's always been floating just under the surface, even if hardly anyone talks about it anymore. So picture this: the waters around Hong Kong at night. Not the glossy postcard version, more like that deep, ink-dark sea where the waves look like they're hiding secrets. That's where the old fishermen used to say something lived. Something the ancient books mentioned, but modern people mostly forgot. They called it the Lo Ting. And I know, right away it sounds like a ghost story, like some sea mermaid tale meant to scare kids into staying away from the docks. But the strange thing is, it isn't only a once upon a time kind of myth. It shows up in old writings from multiple dynasties: Tang, Song, Ming, Qing. Like whoever recorded it genuinely believed it belonged in the world. The descriptions are oddly specific too. The Lo Ting wasn't described as some glittery, beautiful mermaid. Nothing romantic like that. More like a human-shaped sea being that wasn't fully human. People wrote about it having yellowish eyes, short, rough hair, and, this part always gets me, a small tail tucked behind, almost like an afterthought of the ocean clinging to its body. They said it lived near the waters off what we now know as Tai O, around Lantau. Survived on fish, shellfish, little shrimp, simple things. And here's the detail that makes it feel less like fantasy. The Lo Ting was supposedly able to stay underwater for an impossibly long time. Not minutes, days. Like the sea itself was its home in a way land could never be. But the bigger question is, if it was written down so many times, why don't more people know about it now? Well, I think part of it is how the Lo Ting was treated in those old accounts. It wasn't admired. It wasn't celebrated. It was described with this uncomfortable sense of distance, like, this thing is here, but it doesn't belong with us. The stories say the Lo Ting kept away from people. Fisherfolk would be out doing their normal routines, hauling in nets, calling to one another, and then, if one of these creatures surfaced, apparently it would freeze, spot the humans, and just vanish. Slip down into the water like it had never been there. And yet, even with the Lo Ting avoiding people, the rumors didn't fade. If anything, they got stranger. There's one detail. Everyone who's ever heard the story remembers this part, because it's so unsettling. People claimed the Lo Ting drank bird blood. Not human blood, not some dramatic horror movie thing, specifically duck blood in some versions. The tale goes that sometimes the Lo Ting would trade fish with villagers. Quiet, tense exchanges, like nobody wanted to look directly at it too long. But other accounts are darker. It would sneak into farms at night, snatch a duck, and drink its blood before disappearing back into the sea. Why duck blood? Why that? Nobody really has a satisfying explanation, but I've always felt like that detail isn't just there for shock. It's almost like a stamp, a way of saying, this creature is not us. It turns the Lo Ting from strange neighbor of the sea into something marked, something you don't have to understand. Because once it's labeled as disturbing, it's easier to reject. And maybe that's why it slipped out of history. But then, here's the part that always makes me lean in a little. There was this incident in the early 1990s. Not long ago at all, really. Some fishermen near Saikum, not even right by Lantau, claimed they hauled up something in their nets that didn't look like any fish they'd ever seen. Something small, humanish, with odd eyes and coarse hair. No clear photos. No proof anyone can point to now. Just a story that flared up, got repeated for a bit, and then faded again, like the sea swallowed it right back down. And that leaves you with this uneasy feeling, doesn't it? Because the creepiest part of the Lo Ting isn't even whether it existed. It's what it suggests about memory, about how easily something can be pushed to the edges until it becomes just folklore. Maybe the Lo Ting was never a literal creature at all. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, or a rare animal seen in bad light, or an exaggerated account passed between villages. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Maybe it was a story people told about someone or some group that lived differently, looked different, survived differently. Someone on the fringes. And over time, that someone got turned into a something. That's what I can't shake about it. So if you ever find yourself near Lantau, standing where the water stretches out and the air smells like salt and old wood, just pause for a second. Listen. Not for proof, not for a monster, not for anything dramatic. Just imagine the possibility that the sea remembers things we don't. And maybe, somewhere beneath the waves, the low ting is still there, not as a clear shape you can point at, but as a quiet shadow of a story that refuses to die completely. Hey, have you ever driven a mountain road at night? The kind where the curves feel tighter than they should, the guardrails look too thin, and your headlights only show you a little slice of what's coming next. Or maybe you've gone through one of those long tunnels where the radio crackles for no reason, and your own engine sounds louder than usual. Okay, keep that feeling for a second, because that's where this story lives. Back in the late 90s, drivers around Japan started trading this rumor about a stretch near Mount Roko. Nothing official, just something you'd hear from a friend of a friend who swore they weren't making it up. They said, if you drove those winding roads too late, especially if you pushed your speed like you owned the night, you might notice someone in your rearview mirror. At first, it looked ridiculous. Just an older woman, small frame, hair all wild, a cardigan flapping like a little flag in the wind. The kind of person who shouldn't even be out there, let alone anywhere near traffic. And you'd think, is she walking? But then your eyes would focus. No, she wasn't walking. She was running. And not in a normal human way. She moved like her feet barely touched the ground, like the road itself was pulling her forward. People said she could keep pace with a car without even looking tired. Some swore she gained on them when they tried to speed up, like it was a game, and she was offended they thought they could win. They started calling her different things depending on where the story traveled. I've heard Nitro Nana. I've heard 100K Granny. Same idea, different nickname. An old woman who appears out of nowhere and chases you like you've done something you're not supposed to do. And the worst part isn't the image of her running. It's the pursuit. That sick little shift in your stomach when you realize you're being followed, and the follower shouldn't be possible. Because the stories always go the same way after that. You're alone in the car. It's late. Your hands tighten on the wheel without you meaning to. You check your mirror again and again like it's going to change the answer. And each time she's closer, still running, still gaining, her face calm like she's taking a morning stroll. Only her eyes aren't calm. They're locked on you, sharp and patient, like she's been waiting for your headlights to come along. Some people say she knocks on the window. Not a polite tap, more like a firm, insistent knock, right next to your ear, even though you're doing 80 or 90 and the glass should be the only thing you can hear. Other versions say she shows up beside the car without warning, right there at the edge of your light, matching your speed like she's floating. And then, in the darker retellings, she does something worse. She makes you lose control. Not by grabbing the wheel, not like a movie, just by being there, by flooding your brain with panic until your instincts betray you. A slight overcorrection, a glance that lasts a half second too long, a foot that presses the wrong pedal because fear makes you clumsy. What's strange is how the legend spread beyond Japan and still kept the same heartbeat. In Thailand, I once heard a similar story about a spirit people called Mai Racha, a woman who died in a late-night crash and now haunts riders on motorcycles. Different road, different country, same warning baked into the bones of it. Don't tempt the night, and don't assume speed makes you safe. Because that's what these stories are really about, aren't they? Not just a ghost. And there's always this moral tucked inside the legend like a folded note. She shows up for people who drive reckless, people who treat the road like a challenge, people who break the rules because they think the rules don't apply at night. Of course, there's no proof, no clear footage, No crisp photo with her face caught in the headlights. It's mostly anonymous posts and shaky retellings, people on forums insisting they saw her in a tunnel or heard footsteps behind them when there was no one else on the road. And honestly, the lack of evidence almost makes it worse, because it leaves just enough space for your imagination to do what it always does in the dark. So if you're ever driving late, mountain road, tunnel, empty highway, and you get that prickly feeling that you're not alone, do me a favor. Don't speed up to prove something. Just keep steady. Keep your eyes forward. And whatever you do, don't look in the mirror too long. Sometimes the scariest part of a chase is realizing you're the one who started running first. So, have you ever walked down a street that looks ordinary, but somehow feels like it's listening back? There's a road in North Point. People call it Tsatsimui Road now, but older folks still slip and call it the old name, like they're afraid to let it go. And whether you believe in ghosts or not, I swear there's a kind of hush that hangs around that stretch, especially when the evening air turns damp and the neon starts to blur at the edges. Let me tell you why. A long, long time ago, before all the reclamation, before the towers, before North Point became North Point, that area was basically a small fishing village. Poor, close-knit, the kind of place where everyone knew whose boat came home late and whose lantern stayed lit too long. And in that village, there were 7 girls. Not sisters by blood, just sisters by choice. They were the kind of kids life had already bruised early. One had lost her parents to fever. Another had been left behind by a family who simply moved on without her. One of them was taken in by an aunt who treated kindness like it cost money. Different stories, same loneliness. So they made each other their home. They used to meet near the shore after chores, hair still damp from washing clothes, bare feet sandy, hands linked like it was a promise you could physically hold. And one night, they made a vow. No husbands, no leaving, no being given away like property. They'd stay together, always. Here's the part that still hurts to say out loud. The 4th girl, her name was Meilon in the version I first heard, though people argue about names, was suddenly promised to a fisherman's son. Not asked, promised, like it was a trade. She begged, fought, refused, cried herself sick, but the village elders called it fate, and her guardian called it gratitude. And her friends, they couldn't stand the thought of losing her. So the 7 of them went down to the water at night. Not screaming, not dramatic, just quiet, the way people get when their hearts have already made the decision and the rest of them is still catching up. They walked into the sea together, hands tangled, shoulders touching, and let the tide take them. The next morning, the village searched. Days passed, weeks, storms came, still no bodies. But then, this is the detail everyone remembers. After one especially low tide, people saw 7 shapes out near the shore. Not boats, not driftwood, rocks. 7 of them, lined up in a slight curve, biggest to smallest, like someone had arranged them with care. And when the water pulled back far enough, the rocks looked, truly, like 7 girls standing in a row, hands almost touching. The villagers started calling them the 7 Lantern Rocks, because at dusk, the wet stones sometimes caught the last light and gave off a faint shimmer, like old paper lanterns refusing to go out. And the bay around them became the kind of place you didn't visit alone. Over the years, the stories grew the way stories do, breathing bigger with every retelling. People said if you went too close, you'd hear whispering under the waves, like voices trying to remember songs they used to sing. Some said they saw figures in the fog, 7 slim silhouettes, hair hanging heavy, dresses clinging like they'd just stepped out of the sea. My favorite, in the scariest possible way, is the one about the dock worker. He was cutting across the beach late, tired, annoyed, thinking only about getting home, when he noticed a soft glow out by the rocks. Not bright, not dramatic, more like moonlight caught in breath. And that's when he heard it, crying. Gentle at first, almost polite. Then clearer, women's voices calling, not yelling, just beckoning, like they already knew his name. He turned, and he saw them. 7 girls, hand in hand, feet barely touching the sand, drifting toward him as if the tide itself had learned how to walk. He ran so hard he tore the skin off his heel, and he never went near that bay again. People said he wouldn't even drink water at night after that, kept his cup face down like it might invite something in. Then the city started changing everything. In the early 1900s, the area got cleaned up, mapped out, made useful. A swimming pavilion was built out over that same water, bright and cheerful, meant for families and laughter and weekend splashing. People wanted to believe the place had been reclaimed from old fear. But after it opened, drownings started. And not 1 or 2 accidents, the kind of steady, sickening pattern that makes you stop calling it coincidence. Strangely, it was mostly men. Strong swimmers, too. Men who went under fast, as if something had grabbed their ankles and yanked. That's when the older women in the neighborhood began whispering again. Not loudly, never loudly, about cold hands in the water, about the sisters rising from below, about vengeance that didn't need fire or knives. Just a quiet pull, a sudden weight, a gulp of seawater, and a body that didn't come back the same. They said the 7 girls weren't hunting everyone. They were hunting men who were cruel, men who laughed at women's fear, men who treated promises like chains and girls like bargains. And then, of course, came the reclamation. The coastline shifted. The rocks disappeared beneath new land and deeper water, swallowed by concrete and progress and the city's endless hunger for space. But the name stayed. And the feeling stayed too, like the story soaked into the pavement. Someone I met years ago, an older neighbor named Uncle Y. Kit, told me about one evening when he was young. He and a few friends were walking home, cutting through a narrow alley off the main road. Nothing strange, just dim light, trash bins, the smell of rain coming. Then they heard it, a woman sobbing. At first they laughed nervously and said it was probably a TV or a radio. But the crying got louder, closer, as if it was moving through the alley without footsteps. They stopped, held their breath, looked around. No one. Not a silhouette, not a doorway opening, not even the shuffle of someone turning away. Just the sound, raw, aching, filling the empty space. And then it stopped. Not fading, not trailing off. Stopped like a hand had pinched out a candle. Uncle Y. Kit told me he still avoids that alley. Not because he's scared of ghosts, he said, but because some grief shouldn't be disturbed. There's one more story. This one gets told in the lowest voices. A group of teenage boys were messing around on the beach late at night, daring each other to go closer to where the rocks used to be, even though there was nothing to see anymore. They saw a woman in a pale dress standing where the surf met the sand. She didn't sway. She didn't blink. When she spoke, it wasn't a shout. It was almost tender. "Come with me." And the boys said they felt instantly like the air had turned thick, like their lungs were full of water even though they were standing on dry ground. They ran without thinking, tripping over each other, and none of them ever went back to that shoreline again. So, yeah, that's the legend. So if you ever walk along Tatsin Moi Road when the night is quiet, if the wind slips between buildings and suddenly sounds like whispering, don't panic. just keep walking. And maybe, just maybe, don't follow any voice that calls you sweetly from the direction of the sea. Okay, so this is something I heard years ago on a Thai ghost story radio show. One of those late-night ones where callers swear they're telling the truth. And I still get chills thinking about it. The storyteller was a woman named Molly. Not her real name, obviously, but that's what they called her on air. She said this happened when she was younger, when she was broke in that very familiar student way. Counting coins, stretching instant noodles, doing whatever it took just to make rent. Back then, Molly shared a tiny dorm room with another student. Let's call her Pim. 2 single beds, 1 small closet, a fan that barely worked, and a bathroom that always felt slightly damp no matter how much you cleaned. Their plan was simple: share the room, save money, survive university. Pim was the type of roommate you'd pray for. Quiet, polite, always studying. She kept her side of the room neat, spoke softly, and had this routine. Class in the morning, straight back to the dorm after. No partying, no drama. She didn't really bring people over either. Molly, on the other hand, worked nights, so her schedule was flipped. She slept during the day and left for work in the evening. Most of the time, they were like ships passing in the same room. Then one week, Molly got assigned work out of town, about 6 days. Before she left, Pim asked her something that Molly didn't think was strange at the time. She said, kind of carefully, "Are you sure you'll be okay if you come back and I'm not here?" Molly laughed. She assumed Pim just wanted to spend time with a boyfriend or crash somewhere else for a bit. So Molly told her, "Don't worry, I'm not a kid. I'll be fine." And then Molly left. During the trip, everything looked normal online. Molly said she still saw Pim's social media activity, little shared posts, random quotes, the occasional meme. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that screamed, "Something is wrong." Near the end of the trip, Molly tried calling Pim to say she might come back late because her coworkers were dragging her out for dinner. But Pim didn't pick up. Molly shrugged it off. Dorm life is like that. People forget their phones, fall asleep early, get busy. The next day, Molly finally returned. She unlocked the door and walked in. And Pim was there, sitting on her bed, flipping through a book like she always did. Calm, normal, even gave Molly a small smile. Molly remembered thinking, oh, she didn't go anywhere after all. They chatted a little, nothing deep. The kind of tired conversation you have when you just want to shower and collapse. Pim even stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair slowly, like she always did before bed. Molly took a shower, dried off, crawled into bed, and fell asleep. Later, Pim said she needed to step out for a bit. Something about buying toiletries, and slipped out of the room. The following morning, Molly woke up to the room being empty, which made sense. Pim would be in class. Molly went downstairs to grab breakfast at the little food place under the dorm, one of those spots with metal tables and plastic chairs, where everyone talks loud and the fried garlic smell clings to your clothes. And while she was waiting, she heard people complaining. "Something stinks. It's disgusting. I swear it's like something died." They were talking about a rotten smell coming from one of the rooms upstairs. Molly paused and listened, because her room was upstairs too, but she honestly couldn't smell anything. She even sniffed her shirt like an idiot just to check. When she went back up, a neighbor in the hallway asked her, "Do you smell that? It's horrible." Molly said no. She meant it. She didn't smell a thing. The next day, things escalated. The dorm owner came up with her nephew and knocked hard on Mally's door. When Mally opened it, the nephew looked tense, like he'd already decided something was wrong. He said, "The smell is coming from here. I need to come in and check." Mally was confused but stepped aside. Of course she did. What else can you do when someone's insisting your room reeks? The nephew walked in, took maybe 3 steps, and then his entire face changed. He froze, like his body forgot how to move. And then he ran out of the room so fast he almost tripped, screaming, this raw, terrified scream that turned Mally's legs cold. The dorm owner grabbed his arm, demanding to know what he saw. The nephew was shaking, eyes wide, breathing like he'd been underwater. After a moment, he forced himself to go back in. And then, almost immediately, he collapsed near the doorway, crying and shouting like he was having a panic attack. At that point, Mally and the dorm owner rushed inside. And that's when Mally saw it. In the bathroom was Pim. Not Pim sitting on the bed, not Pim brushing her hair. Pim's body. She had hanged herself. Her face was swollen, her tongue protruding, and the smell, hit Mally all at once like a wall. The kind of smell that makes your stomach flip even before your brain fully understands what you're looking at. Mally said she remembers seeing dark stains, fluids, the awful signs of time passing in a room that's too small for death to hide in. The police arrived. Medical examiners came. And then the part that made the whole dorm go quiet. They estimated Pim had been dead for about 9 to 10 days, meaning she died on the very first night Mally left town. So when Mally came back and saw Pim sitting there, reading, smiling, brushing her hair, that couldn't have been real. They searched Pim's things and found a notebook. Inside was a short note, nothing dramatic, just the kind of exhausted sadness that hurts more because it's plain. Something like, I tried. I really tried. But I can't do it anymore. There were pages about money stress, school pressure, and a relationship that had fallen apart. Pim believed she was pregnant, and she'd recently found out her boyfriend was seeing someone else. The last entries were shaky, like her hands couldn't stay steady. But here's the part Mally couldn't explain, even years later. This is what made it a ghost story instead of just a tragedy. Mally had lived in that room for days, with Pim's body in the bathroom. She had talked to Pim, heard her voice, watched her move around, watched her leave the room, and she had used that bathroom more than once without noticing anything. Most people who heard the story had the same theory. They said Mally's mind must have seen the truth the moment she walked in, must have taken it in for a split second. The body, the horror, the impossible reality. And then her brain, trying to keep her from breaking completely, slammed a door shut. Like a survival switch. So instead of reality, her mind gave her something else. A version of Pim that looked normal. A roommate still alive. A routine that made sense. A blind spot so big it could hide death in a bathroom just a few steps away. And Mally, she didn't know she was living inside that blind spot until the door finally got forced open. Hey, so I'm a medical examiner now, and I don't usually share stories like this. Honestly, I kept this one tucked away for years, even before I ever worked around a morgue. But it's been sitting in the back of my mind lately, and I figured maybe saying it out loud to someone who will actually listen is the only way to make sense of it. Back when I was in my early 20s, I was still in college. Biology track, pre-med, the whole everything has an explanation mindset. I had this friend, Lena, and one weekend we decided to go hiking near the Natchez Trace. Not the busiest part either, one of those stretches where the trees close in and the world gets quieter with every step. We'd heard the usual rumors. Haunted woods, strange feelings, people seeing things they couldn't explain. I rolled my eyes at it, of course. I mean, I was the science guy. I didn't do spooky legends. Anyway, we're walking side by side, and Lena suddenly slows down and lifts her phone like she's lining up a shot. She says she saw something ahead, some kind of animal maybe, just standing there at the edge of the trail. I didn't see anything. I remember squinting into the distance and seeing nothing but trees and shadow. She snapped a photo anyway, quick and nervous, like she didn't want whatever it was to notice her. We didn't talk about it much in the moment. We just kept moving. A minute or two later, maybe less, I drifted a little ahead of her, not far at all. And that's when I saw it. This circle. Not like a ring of mushrooms or a patch of trampled grass. I mean a perfectly defined circle. Like somebody took a compass and cut it out of the forest floor. Inside it, nothing. No weeds, no grass, no low little plants trying to reclaim space. Just bare earth. Dead looking and clean in a way nature usually isn't. And I remember thinking, that can't be right. Because nature doesn't do that. Not neatly. Not without a reason. Even a sick patch of ground still tries to grow something. I stepped closer and looked around the edge, trying to figure out what I was even seeing. Was it chemical runoff? Old fire damage? Disease? Animals? My brain was sprinting through explanations because that's what I did. I categorized things until they made sense, but standing near it made me uneasy. Not scared exactly, more like my body knew something was wrong before my mind could label it. And then I did the dumbest thing you can do when you're trying to prove you're not nervous. I stepped into it. Just a couple steps, then one more. And before I realized it, I was standing right in the middle. And here's the part I still can't explain to you in a way that feels rational. The anxiety disappeared the moment I hit the center. Like somebody reached into my chest and gently unplugged the fear. Not in a drugged way, not fuzzy, just calm. Clean calm. A stillness so complete, it felt like my thoughts had space between them. And then Lena came running up behind me, and I'll never forget the sound she made, like a gasp that turned into a shout. "Get out of it, now!" The way I turned and saw her face, and it actually startled me more than the circle did. She was pale, shaking, eyes wide like she'd seen something that rewired her brain. I stepped out immediately, because whatever was happening, she looked like she was watching me walk into a trap. Lena grabbed my arm and pulled me away, like she couldn't stand the idea of me being close to it. Once she could talk, she admitted she'd noticed the circle first. That's what she'd been taking a picture of earlier, not an animal. She'd wanted to show it to me because I was the logical one. She wanted me to give her some tidy explanation for how a circle like that could exist naturally. But she never expected me to step into it. Because she'd heard the legend. Apparently, locals had stories about it, about women meeting out there long ago, dancing in circles in the woods, calling something up that never really left. And the way the story goes, if you stand in the center, you're not alone anymore. You feel watched. You feel a presence right at your back, like you've stepped into someone else's space and they're noticing you. The weirdest thing is, I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel threatened. I felt safe, peaceful. Like for the first time all day, I wasn't carrying my own weight. But the silence, God, the silence, that part was real. When I was in the center, it was like the forest held its breath. No rustle, no birds, no bugs, nothing. The kind of quiet that should make your skin crawl. And yet, it didn't. That's what still bothers me. Not the legend, not even the barren circle itself, though that alone makes no sense. It's the fact that something that should have set off every alarm in my body did the opposite. It soothed me. So I don't know what to do with it. I've turned it over in my head for years. Soil composition, fungus, chemicals, old burn scars, anything. But I keep coming back to that same impossible image. A perfect circle where nothing grows, season after season. and the strange, unsettling peace waiting right in the center of it. And I'm telling you now because I don't live anywhere near there anymore, and I still think about it sometimes, usually late at night, wondering what I stepped into and why it didn't want to scare me at all. So, okay, let me set the scene for you. My husband Evan and I just moved into this little starter house. Nothing fancy, but it felt right. It's tucked in this neighborhood I grew up around, like 5 minutes from my old high school. The building isn't a school anymore, shut down years ago after a bunch of messy staff drama. And I won't lie, there was something comforting about being near a place that used to be such a big part of my life. Plus, there's this gorgeous walking trail practically at the end of the block, and a creek runs behind the tree line like it's just always been there, minding its business. The kind of spot where you can picture yourself settling in. First real home vibes, you know? Anyway, a few nights after we move in, Evan falls asleep early, and I'm out on the couch doing what I do best, turning on comfort TV like I pay the bills with it. And yes, it was Scooby-Doo. Don't judge me. I'm not defending myself. I'm simply living. We have one of those remotes with the big shortcut buttons. Netflix, Disney+, Apple TV, and Max. Easy. I put Scooby on, and at some point I pass out with it still playing. Morning comes. We wake up and the TV is on YouTube. At first I'm like, okay, whatever. Evan basically breathes YouTube, so it didn't seem weird, until he looks at me and goes, "When did you switch it to YouTube last night?" And I'm like, I didn't? Because here's the thing. YouTube isn't one of the shortcut buttons, and on our TV you can't even get into it without picking a profile first. It's annoying, like extra steps annoying, not something you accidentally do half asleep. But we shrug it off. Technology glitch. Remote got sat on. Gremlins. Whatever. 2 days later, Evan's at work. I have the day off, but I'm still working, sitting on the couch with papers everywhere, doing that thing where you turn messy notes into something clean and official. It's boring, but it's my routine. It's normal. The house is quiet. Too quiet. And then I hear a cough. Just a cough. Like someone clearing their throat somewhere down the hall. I freeze for a second, but then I tell myself it's probably the neighbors. Sound carries weird in certain houses, right? So I go back to my notes. And then, no, seriously, then I hear Evan's voice, plain as day, from the bedroom. He says my name. Not like a random noise, not like the TV, like Evan, calling for me the way he always does. My whole body went cold. That instant, prickly, full body, something is wrong feeling. I walk straight to the front window and look out at the driveway, because he took my car that morning. And sure enough, no car. So it's not him. There's no way it's him. And I'm standing there, staring like I'm trying to logic my way out of panic. And then it happens again. My name. From the bedroom. And again. And again. 4 times total. I don't even remember grabbing my shoes, but I just left. I went outside and walked the trail like I could outrun my own thoughts. I kept telling myself, you are stressed. You're tired. You're in a new house. Your brain is being weird. I tried to breathe it into the back of my mind. Eventually I come back, sit down, and force myself to keep working like I didn't just hear my husband's voice in an empty bedroom. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's probably our friend, Miles, because he's crashing with us for a few weeks for work. No big deal. So I glance back without even fully standing up, and I see shoes. But they aren't Evan's shoes. They aren't Miles's shoes. They're these wrong shoes, like the kind you notice because they don't belong in your space. The shape was off. The vibe was off. I don't know how else to describe it. I spin around, fast, and there is nobody there. Nothing. Empty kitchen. Quiet house. My water bottle still cold in my hand like I'm in some kind of prank I didn't agree to. And that was the moment where the fear stopped being a quick spike and turned into something heavier, something that sat on my chest. Because after that, being in the house started to feel suffocating. Not like, oh, I'm creeped out. Like, I can't think straight in here. Like the air is thicker. Like everything that normally makes me feel competent, organized, sharp, calm, just drains out of me the second I step inside. I would lose things. I'd forget what I was doing mid-task. I'd start a sentence and completely blank. And I'm not someone who usually feels scattered. It was like my brain was getting fogged on purpose. Evan felt it too. Not exactly the same way, but enough that when I finally said, "Something is wrong here," he didn't laugh. He just got quiet and nodded. We tried to be rational. We talked about stress, lack of sleep, moving chaos, all of it. I even asked myself if this could be some kind of mental response to something I wasn't acknowledging. But nothing fit. And honestly, even if it was stress, stress doesn't usually imitate your husband's voice from an empty room. So, we decided to bring someone in. A priest. I know how that sounds. I do. But at a certain point, you stop caring how it sounds when you're living it. He came by and did a blessing, and he explained there's a whole process for anything more serious, and that made sense to me. I actually appreciated that he didn't act dramatic about it, just calm, methodical, like he'd done this before. But even after that, things didn't completely stop. And then, this part still gets me. Our neighbors ended up coming over one afternoon. Their toddler has this little hobby of sprinting up to our porch and ringing the doorbell and taking off like a tiny chaos athlete, so they came to apologize. They seemed sweet, and we ended up chatting for a long time, like hours, because it turns out we have mutual friends and the conversation just flowed. And eventually, I worked up the courage and said something like, "Okay, this is going to sound weird, but have you ever noticed anything off around here?" And she just stared at me for a second and went, "Yes." Like it wasn't even a question. She told me things shift around in their house. Small stuff, but constant. Like objects that don't stay where they're put. And sometimes they hear voices when nobody's speaking. She said it casually, but her eyes didn't look casual. Then she mentioned she'd asked around, other neighbors, older folks who've lived here forever, and she found out the area was once part of an old burial site. Not officially marked anymore, and over time the land changed because of flooding and storms, and parts of the neighborhood were raised and reshaped. Basically, the ground we're on has been moved and rebuilt and layered over and over. And what used to be there didn't exactly get a say in the matter. And here's the thing. I'm not automatically terrified of the idea of spirits. If something is just there, existing, fine. I can live with unseen. I can live with unexplained. But what I can't live with is feeling threatened in my own home. That's the line. So we're still figuring it out, still taking steps, still trying to get our footing in a place that was supposed to feel like comfort and familiarity, but keeps pressing in like it doesn't want us to settle. And honestly, even just telling you this out loud makes me feel a little less alone in it. Because it's one thing to be brave in theory. It's another thing entirely to hear your name called from an empty room and have your whole body understand, before your mind can even catch up, that something is there with you. Hey, so if we haven't met, I'm a medical examiner. And yeah, I know how that sounds when I say I've had my share of experiences with the paranormal. But I need you to understand something up front. We always try to debunk things first. We look for the boring explanation before we even let ourselves consider the weird one. Most of the strange stuff I've dealt with has stayed inside the morgue walls. This one didn't. And technically, it didn't even happen to me. It happened to a coworker of mine. I'll call her Marisol. Marisol is the kind of person who holds everything together. Work, home, all of it. Like she's constantly balancing glass plates. She's also the kind of mom who can't leave a room without making sure her kid feels safe. Her son is 6, and I'll call him Eli. He's glued to her whenever he can be. Total mom has to be within eyesight type of kid. Anyway, this happened a couple weekends back. Marisol had stayed a little later at the morgue to finish up some paperwork that would have otherwise landed on my desk. I'd come in early that day to give her some breathing room. She had family plans. And she insisted on returning the favor by wrapping up the admin stuff. We said our goodbyes and she headed home. That night was completely normal. Dinner, bath, pajamas, the whole routine. She took a quick shower once Eli was settled, got ready for bed, and went to do the last check-in. Kiss goodnight, adjust the blanket, the usual. But when she got to his room, the door was open. And here's the thing. That door is never open. They've got one of those child safety covers on the knob, and Eli has never been able to work it properly. He sleeps in this little race car bed, bright red, plastic, the kind of thing you'd expect a kid to love, and he was out cold. Not stirring, not fidgeting, just completely peaceful. The open door was the only thing that didn't fit. Marisol paused for a second, stared at it like, okay, how? But she brushed it off, kissed his forehead, pulled the door shut, and went to her bedroom. She mentioned it to her husband, Caleb, in that casual way you mention something that feels odd but not alarming yet. And Caleb was like, I shut his door earlier. He sounded sure. So Marisol did what we all do when we're exhausted. She grabbed the most reasonable explanation and held on to it. Maybe Eli got up and somehow managed the knob cover. Maybe it didn't latch all the way. Maybe one of them misremembered. They didn't check the camera that night. Not yet. It didn't feel like a camera situation. They finally fell asleep around 2 a.m. Then, around 3:10, Eli came running into their room, sobbing so hard he could barely breathe, like full-body panic. Not a bad dream, I need water cry. This was terror. Marisol sat straight up, instantly alert, and Caleb was right behind her asking what happened, trying to calm him down. Eli kept repeating, "He opened it. He opened it." And Marisol's stomach just dropped. They checked the baby monitor footage. And this is where it turned from weird to, what do we do with this? On the video, Eli is asleep. You can see his little chest rising and falling. The camera doesn't point at the door. It's angled mostly toward the bed because Eli has a health issue and they want to monitor him while he sleeps. It's also an older camera they pulled from storage after their newer one started glitching earlier that same week, so the video quality isn't great. But you can see the hallway light spill in when the door opens. And on the footage, that light appears. The door opens while Eli is still asleep. Eli wakes up fast, like he felt it. He turns his head toward the door and he says something. You can see his mouth move, like he's responding to someone. But the audio doesn't pick it up, and the camera is too fuzzy to read his lips clearly. Then the next clip is him bolting out of bed and running down the hall. Marisol asked him, as gently as she could, what he saw, and Eli told her there was a man. A big man. Wearing a hat. And he said the man's eyes were glowing, Marisol asked, "What did he say to you, honey?" And Eli said, "He told me, go away." Not, "I'll get you." Not, "I'm in your room." Just, "Go away." Like the man was annoyed that Eli noticed him. Like Eli was the one who wasn't supposed to be there. Since that night, Marisol has noticed small things. Doors left open that swear they shut. A cabinet not quite right. A toy showing up in a different room than where it was left. The kind of stuff you can write off if you're trying to protect your sanity. And Eli hasn't seen the man again. He has said a couple strange little comments here and there, mostly when he's playing with a neighborhood friend, a little girl around his age. But honestly, those sounded more like regular kid imagination stuff. Nothing that lined up with what happened that night. That's what keeps bothering Marisol. Because when kids invent things, it's usually, robots, monsters made of slime, superheroes. Not a dark, towering man in a hat with glowing eyes opening a bedroom door while you're asleep. So, I'm telling you this because I'm curious what you think. Is it something paranormal? Is there a normal explanation we're missing? Air pressure, a bad latch, a camera illusion, sleep terror layered on top of a coincidence? Or is the simplest answer really just that two sleep-deprived adults are finally hitting the wall, and their brains are turning ordinary life into a horror movie? I don't know, but I'll tell you this. When the most unsettling part is the absence, no footsteps, no shadow, no one visible, just the door opening and a child reacting to someone who isn't there. That's the part that sticks with you. So, this happened when I was about 5. My parents had already split up, and my dad was living in this rough little apartment in a part of town nobody really loved being in. When my brother, Eli, and I stayed with him, we didn't have bedrooms or anything. We'd drag out these squeaky folding cots and sleep right there in the living room like it was totally normal. One night, I woke up for no reason, just popped awake the way kids do, and I saw something standing in the corner. At first, I couldn't make out details. It was dark, but I could tell it was a man-shaped figure. Just a person, standing still where a person absolutely shouldn't be. And I was terrified of the dark back then. Like, really terrified. But my parents had worked so hard to talk me down from that fear, They'd always go, "It's just a coat," or "It's only a shadow," or "That's the house creaking." So my brain tried to do that same thing automatically. My first thought wasn't monster. Weirdly, my first thought was, is my dad messing with me? Which makes no sense because he never played pranks like that. But I guess my little kid logic was like, maybe he's testing me. And I remember thinking, so clearly, if I react, he wins. So I tried to act like I didn't see anything and just rolled over like it was fine. Yeah, it was not fine. I couldn't fall back asleep. I waited a while, then looked again. Still there. Same corner. Same stillness. No shifting, no stepping, nothing. So I did what felt like the safest possible thing a 5-year-old could do. I pulled the blanket up over my head. Like the blanket was a magic shield, and every so often, I'd peek out. Each time I peeked, the figure was still there, quiet, patient, just standing like it had all the time in the world. The reason I'm bringing up the neighborhood is there were transitional homes nearby, the kind that come with a lot of scary rumors and, honestly, some real incidents. People talked. Parents warned their kids. We had rules like, don't go behind that building, don't walk home alone, don't talk to strangers. Stuff no kid should be carrying around in their head, but we did. So as the night dragged on and that thing didn't move, my thoughts shifted, slowly. And I hate this part, because it makes my stomach feel tight even now. I stopped thinking it was my dad. I started thinking it was someone who'd come in to take my brother. I don't know why that explanation clicked, but it did. It felt real, like my brain landed on it and couldn't let go. There was a door out of the living room, and it was loud, like it always stuck and made this awful scraping sound when you opened it. So I told myself, if he leaves, I'll hear the door. I stayed under the blanket, but I made this tiny opening, just enough to keep Eli in my line of sight, like I could somehow protect him just by watching. I kept listening, holding my breath between every little creak and pop the apartment made. Every so often, I'd flick my eyes back toward that corner, just to check. And then, it started getting lighter outside. You know that gray, early morning light where things finally stop being pure darkness, but everything still looks wrong? That's when I could actually see it. It was a man, but it didn't look like any man I've ever seen. And the worst part was the eyes. Because they weren't scanning the room. They weren't looking around. They were looking right at me. Not past me, not near me, at me. I remember thinking, don't look again. Like if I looked again, something would happen. So I pulled the blanket back up and just stayed there, completely still, waiting to hear that stupid door groan open. I never heard it. But when morning finally came, real morning, bright enough to see the whole room, I looked and the corner was empty. Nothing. No furniture, no hanging coat, no weird pile of clothes, no lamp making a shadow. Just bare corner, like it had always been bare. I didn't tell my dad. I didn't tell my brother. I didn't tell anyone for a long time. I've only told one friend in my life. Her name was Marisol, and she immediately went, "That sounds like a vampire." But I don't really believe in that stuff. I don't think it was a ghost or a demon or a shadow person or whatever. And I've had nightmares. I've even had sleep paralysis later in life, where you're awake but your body won't move, and your brain does horrifying things with shadows. This wasn't that. I could move. I could think. I remember making choices, when to peek, when to hide, how to watch my brother. It felt like I was in my body, in that room, in that moment. I don't know what it was. I just have this strong feeling it wasn't a person. But I also can't bring myself to slap a paranormal label on it either. Mostly, I'm left with this one question that still nags at me, even now. Has anyone else ever seen something like that? Something that stands there, silently, like it's waiting, until the light comes, and then it's just gone? So, probably the most scared I've ever been in my whole life happened when I was like 17. Maybe just barely 18. You know that age where you think you're invincible and your entire personality is basically, let's party wherever we can. Yeah, that was me. That night, a bunch of us ended up drinking at this girl's place. She was connected to one of my friends somehow. Cousin? Stepsister? Half-sister? I honestly couldn't tell you. All I remember is she was around 20, and she was living alone in this house her mom owned. Her mom did something in real estate, I think, like property management or staging or something. The point is, no parents, no supervision, a whole house to mess around in. It felt like winning the lottery. We're hanging out, music on, people laughing too loud, cups everywhere. And early in the night, kind of casually, like it was a joke, she goes, "Oh, by the way, people say this place is haunted." And I laughed, totally brushed it off. Someone else chimed in like, "Yeah, my friend swears something followed him down the hallway once." And I was just like, "Sure, okay." I was not buying it at all, not even a little. At some point later, I passed out on this old futon in this back den, like an add-on room attached to the living room. I don't even remember deciding to sleep. I just woke up in the middle of the night in a fog, sitting up like my body did it on its own. And when I sat up, I was facing this big sliding glass door that looked out into the backyard. There was a small black and white cat sitting outside on the patio, perfectly still, staring into the house. At first I just thought, that's weird. Like, why is there a cat out there in the middle of the night? But it didn't scare me yet. Not right away. I started doing that half-awake thing where you're trying to remember where you are, where your shoes are, where your phone is. I'm rubbing my eyes, looking around, and that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The cat wasn't looking at me. At all. Which sounds small, but think about it. If you move, a cat usually tracks you, even just a little. So I waved my hand, kind of stupidly, like I was trying to get its attention. Nothing. The cat didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't even flick an ear. It was completely locked onto something inside the house, past me, into the living room area behind where I was sitting. Like I was invisible, like I wasn't even there. And that's when the air in the room changed. That's the only way I can explain it. It just shifted. It felt like my body understood something before my brain did. My skin got cold. My mouth went dry. And all of a sudden, I started hearing small sounds around the house. Not big, loud bangs, more like little movements. A faint shuffle from the kitchen. Something that sounded like a cabinet settling. A soft creak like a floorboard being tested by weight. And I kept telling myself, houses do that. Old houses creak. Fridges hum. Pipes tick. You're drunk and half asleep. Calm down. But the sounds weren't random. They felt directed. Like something was moving from one part of the house to another. Slowly. Intentionally. And the worst part was the feeling that came with it. This overwhelming sense that I wasn't alone. And not in the casual, other people are sleeping nearby kind of way. More like, something is here, and it knows you're awake. All I wanted, literally the only thing I wanted, was to get to the next room where my friend Dylan was sleeping. He'd crashed on a mattress on the floor, maybe 15 feet away. 15 feet. But it felt like a mile. It felt impossible. And the whole time, that cat stayed outside the door, staring into the room behind me like it was watching something pass through. Finally, I forced myself up, like I was moving through water, and I half walked, half ran into the room where Dylan was. I dropped down next to him and shook him hard. He woke up annoyed, all groggy and irritated like, "What are you doing, man?" And I leaned in and whispered, because I couldn't even say it at full volume, "Dylan, something is wrong. I swear something is happening in this house." And I'm not exaggerating. The exact moment I finished that sentence, the power died. Everything, all at once. The ceiling fan stopped mid-spin. The little lights on electronics blinked off. The room went silent in this really specific way, like you could actually hear the house losing electricity. Like a low hum winding down, the fridge cutting out, everything just shutting off. It wasn't like a flicker. It wasn't like, oops, the breaker tripped. It was instant. The timing was so perfect it felt impossible. Dylan's eyes went wide immediately, like wide, because he went from dead asleep to sitting in darkness with me basically saying, "Something's in this house," and then the entire place going black in the same breath. We didn't move. We just laid there, stiff as boards, listening. I remember both of us breathing way too loud, trying to hear anything over our own panic. After what felt like forever, but was probably a couple minutes, the power came back on. The fan whirred back to life. The fridge clicked. The house made noise again. And we didn't really talk about it. Not in any deep way. It was more like we just waited until our bodies stopped shaking, and eventually, somehow, we fell back asleep. But I'll tell you this, when the sun came up, I couldn't get out of that house fast enough. To this day, I don't care what anyone says. That was the scariest moment I've ever lived through. And whatever I thought about haunted houses before that night, yeah, that night made me a believer. So, when I was a kid, I was that kid. The one who hunted down scary movies like they were treasure. Haunted tapes, ghost stories, weird late-night TV specials. If it promised nightmares, I was in. And my mom, she's never been the paranormal type, like, at all. Which is why this story always stuck with me. For years, I honestly wasn't even sure it was real. I thought maybe I'd half-dreamed it or mashed it together with something I watched. But I asked her again recently, and she just nodded like, "Oh yeah, that happened." When she was young, her family moved constantly because her dad was in the Navy. They bounced around a lot, places like Washington, Okinawa, back through Europe for a bit. Always packing, always adjusting. But this particular thing happened while they were living in an old rental house in Montana. The kind of house that looks normal in daylight, but at night feels like it's listening. From the start, my mom said the house was cold. Not drafty old house cold. I mean, cold in a way that didn't make sense. Even in the warmer months, even with the heat running, some rooms stayed icy like the sun couldn't reach them. Everyone complained about it, but mostly in that shrugging way people do when they don't want to think too hard about something. Then one night, my mom had this dream. In the dream, she was standing in her bedroom, staring into her closet. And in the back of the closet, where there shouldn't have been anything but wall, there was a small door, like a little access door, the kind you'd only notice if you were looking for it. Dream Mom opened it, and sitting on the floor behind it was a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, hair messy, face pale, eyes way too focused. She wasn't crying or hiding or anything like that. She was just sitting there like she belonged there. In her lap was this old doll. The girl looked up at my mom and smiled. Not a friendly smile, not even a mischievous one. More like she was enjoying the moment. Like she knew something my mom didn't. Then, still holding eye contact, she grabbed the doll and twisted. And she tore the doll's head clean off. In the dream, the little girl laughed, this sharp, delighted laugh, and my mom woke up immediately. Heart racing, skin prickling, that gross feeling you get when a dream leaves something behind in your body. She laid there in the dark, trying to tell herself it was just her brain being weird. But the dream felt too specific, too detailed. And the thing that really got her was the door. Because as far as she knew, there was no door in the back of her closet. But she couldn't let it go. So she got out of bed and went down the hall to wake up her older brother. His name was Marcus. She shook him awake, whispering fast, explaining the dream, probably sounding half panicked and half embarrassed. Like, "I know this is stupid, but can you just come look with me?" Marcus was sleepy and annoyed, but he went. Because that's what older siblings do when they're decent enough. They crept back into her room and pulled open the closet. And there it was. A small door, hidden behind hanging clothes and old boxes. A real one. Not imaginary. Not a trick of shadows. My mom just stood there for a second, staring at it, feeling that awful no, no, no sensation climb up her spine. Marcus opened it. And behind that little door was a shallow crawl space. Apparently, it led under the bathtub. just enough room for someone to shove things in there, or for things to end up there. And on the floor inside was a doll, an old doll, with its head ripped off. But his face went weird too, tight and pale in that way that says, I don't like this. I'm trying to act brave, but I don't like this. They slammed the little door shut and backed away like it might reach for them. I asked my mom if they told their parents, and she kind of hesitated when she answered, like the details were blurry after all these years. But she said her mom, my grandma, was the superstitious one, the one who trusted gut feelings and kept little charms in drawers and believed houses could hold on to things. Whether my mom confessed the whole story or not, the mood in that house shifted after that. Like nobody wanted to be alone in certain rooms anymore. Like everyone started sleeping with doors open, lights on, radios playing softly, anything to make the silence less thick. And eventually, my grandma decided she couldn't handle it. She and my grandpa had an extra room built onto the house, an addition, like they were physically trying to step away from something that couldn't be named. And here's the part that still creeps me out. That new room was the only place in the whole house that felt normal. It was warmer, brighter, less heavy. So little by little, everyone migrated into it. Kids, parents, everybody. Mattresses on the floor, blankets piled up, all of them sleeping in the same space like an unspoken agreement. We're not sleeping in the rest of this house if we don't have to. They stayed like that until the next move. And my mom, who still doesn't care about ghosts, who still rolls her eyes at paranormal stuff, told me this story in the same tone you'd use to describe a broken stair or a leaky pipe. Like it was just something that happened. But every time I think about that dream, and that little door, and the doll waiting on the other side, I get that same cold feeling she described, the kind that doesn't match the season. Okay, so I'm 18 and I'm from Germany, and I've been practicing witchcraft for a while now. I'm not someone who works with a bunch of entities or anything like that. If anything, I keep things pretty simple. I mostly just exist alongside whatever's already around me. And in my room, I've always felt like there are spirits, ghosts, whatever you want to call them. It's never been a scary thing, more like familiar. Stuff goes missing and shows up in weird places. Sometimes a candle will go out like someone gently blew on it. And I'd honestly talk out loud sometimes like, hey, I see you, because it never felt hostile. It felt like roommates I couldn't fully see. But then things started getting off. So around 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe closer to 2.5, I was practicing a dance with a friend of mine, Alina, for a class we do at school. We were in my room, just running the choreography again and again, and I had my phone recording so we could watch our form afterward. And in the middle of it, this loud crash happens behind us. Like, sharp and sudden, the kind of sound that makes your whole stomach drop. We both jumped and spun around at the same time. On my altar, there was this small glass dish, like a little tray, that had been sitting on top of a jar for ages. It never wobbled, never looked unstable, nothing. But that day it just fell. Not slid, not tipped. It felt like something knocked it off. It hit the floor and shattered, and it didn't just break itself. It wrecked my whole altar setup. Herbs scattered, little items knocked over, everything a mess. At first I was like, okay, gravity, sure, and I tried to shrug it off. But later we watched the recording, and I swear to you, it makes no sense. There's no bump, no vibration, nothing near it. It's just sitting there. And then suddenly, it drops, like it decided to. That was the first time I felt that weird little pinch of fear, because it wasn't playful. It wasn't the usual, oops, where did my ring go, kind of energy. Then about a week later, something happened that still makes my skin prickle when I think about it. I was getting ready to go out with my sister, Juna. We were going to meet friends, and I was in the bathroom doing my makeup. And my bathroom connects directly to my room, like you walk through my room to get to it. The room is long and kind of rectangular, and my closet is basically a tiny room all the way on the other end. So I'm blending my makeup, half focused, and out of the corner of my eye I see my sister, like I see her head and shoulder, peek into the bathroom and look at me. It was such a normal thing that I didn't even react right away. I just turned like, what? But when I looked straight at her, there was nothing there. She didn't walk away. She didn't step back. She just wasn't there. And literally at the same time, I hear my sister's voice call my name, from the closet, from far away. I remember just standing there, staring, trying to make it make sense. Like maybe my brain glitched, maybe it was a reflection, maybe I was tired. So I walked over to her and asked, "Did you just look into the bathroom?" And she goes, "No, I've been in here the whole time." Both of us got quiet for a second, and then we did that thing people do when they're scared but don't want to admit it. We laughed. Like, nervous laughing. Because we're both practicing witches, and we've had weird moments before, but this felt different. Like something pretending. And that's what bothered me the most. Because the spirits in my room, the ones I thought I knew, they'd never tried to scare me, never thrown something off my altar, never mimicked someone I love. My parents are divorced, so I go between houses. I was standing outside my mom's apartment door, keys in hand, and Juna was next to me. I was about to unlock the door when I felt a tap on my shoulder, like a hand. Not a brush, not fabric, not wind, an intentional tap-tap. I whipped around so fast, ready to yell at my sister for messing with me, but she was just standing there with both hands visible, looking confused. And my brain immediately went, spider. I don't even know why, it was just panic. I screamed and started swatting at my shoulder like something was crawling on me, but when I checked, there was nothing. No spider. Nothing. And then, because we're us, we laughed again. Like, "Oh my God, you're so dramatic," and we went inside. But later that night, I couldn't stop thinking, what if that was the moment it attached? Like it followed me in. Like it wanted to come with me. I've been staying at my mom's since then, and yesterday morning, I woke up and my legs were covered in bruises. Like, a lot of them. I just stared at them, trying to tell myself I probably bumped into something and didn't notice. Maybe I was restless in my sleep. I didn't want to panic, so I forced myself to act normal. But then in the evening, I went to shower, and while I was in there, my legs started bleeding. Not like a little dot, like actual blood. When I looked, there were scratches on my skin that weren't there before. They were thin, like tiny lines, but the amount of blood didn't match how small they were. It freaked me out so badly I felt cold all over. That was the first time I felt genuinely scared. Not curious scared. Not, that was weird scared. Like, unsafe scared. So I did what I know how to do. I performed a protection spell. I put a glass of salt and water in my room at my mom's, like a boundary, like an anchor, something to catch whatever this is. And I tried to tell myself, I'm protected, I'm okay, I'm in control. But I can't stop thinking about how people always say ghosts don't really follow you. Like, they're tied to places, not people, unless it's something darker. And I hate even letting my mind go there, because I don't want to feed it fear, but I'm terrified. And I keep asking myself, if the spirits I knew were friendly, what is this thing that throws glass, mimics my sister, taps me like it has a hand, and leaves marks on my body? I don't know what to do next. I just know I don't want this in my mom's house, and I don't want it near my sister. And I don't want to feel like I'm being watched in places that are supposed to be safe. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. And I really, really need some idea of what this could be and what I should do.